liking our new jams. Hope that you guys are enjoying the new music that we're bringing to you from the newsroom. It's Tuesday, May 22nd. I'm here with Risa, our social media editor. Welcome to the show, guys. Fox 5 Live today. You can see the date right on your screen there. May 22nd, 2018. We're heading in with a few days left till Memorial Day weekend. Very exciting. Crazy.
Around so quick.
Crazy. It is still a little, like you saw the rainy White House. Check it out. The rain on that camera lens. Still pretty wet, pretty uncomfortable today. It's going to be kind of muggy and foggy this week, but we're looking forward to hopefully a little sunshine this weekend. And then wherever you guys are traveling, hopefully you get some sunshine too on Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I would hope so too. I feel like it kind of always rains around that time frame, but it's always like up and down.
You never know.
It'll rain a little bit and then the sun will come out. Memories I have just from
True.
Day weekend.
And if you barbecue, you know, you definitely want that good weather. If you're joining us, we are Fox 5 Live in our newsroom here at Fox 5 DC, a live stream of anything that's happening, breaking news, breaking video that's coming into us via our satellites, via our operations and our control room. Right now, a couple things on the Hill going on, and we have some other stuff in waiting, including Mark Zuckerberg. He's going to be speaking to the EU Parliament. And he'll be talking about that same data scandal from Facebook that we've been seeing and hearing about. He testified before the Senate. We heard him on Capitol Hill for a while. Yeah, it was crazy. We took all of that live. We had that on our live stream in an archived post. But today we're going to hopefully be popping into that in the next 10 minutes or so, because he's slated to come up around noon Eastern time over there, like I said, in front of EU Parliament. And I'm going to be finding out a little more information on this. We'll bring that to you, but we're going to talk about speaking of social media, some social media stories that are kind of big today for a second. But just a little brief summary of what is happening. Apparently, he's going to appear around 12:15 p.m. Eastern time. So actually, that's in about 25 minutes or so. And yeah, he'll be answering questions about the company's protection of personal data, just like we heard about with the Cambridge Analytica scandal that he talked about and testified before Congress about in recent weeks, and he'll be talking this time to Europe about that. So we'll check in to the government stream on that to get a look at that as well, all relevant to stuff that we do, to stuff that we use every day, including Facebook and Instagram. Speaking of that, what is going on Instagram today, on social?
Speaking about Instagram, guys, so I feel like this is one of the biggest news talkers, and you're going to say, finally.
Okay.
So Instagram is finally rolling out an option where you can mute your followers. That's right, guys.
Oh, I heard about this.
Don't throw your followers away. Just
mute them.
So apparently it's going to start rolling out, or it should have rolled out today. I've tried to put it to the test. It hasn't exactly worked.
Okay.
So what happens is, what you essentially do is you go to Bob 14's Instagram account. You click on the three little dots that exist right above his bio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on there, you'll have a slew of options: block, report, hide URL, whatever the case may be. In that section now, there will be a mute section where you click. So you can either mute the profile entirely because you're tired of seeing Bob's pictures, or you can simultaneously mute Bob's account and his stories, so you will never have to see Bob's stuff again. So why is this rolling out? Because, guys, come on, how many friendships have been broken because of this?
For following and unfollowing.
For unfollowing.
Because my first reaction is, why not just unfollow something you don't want to see?
That's my case.
Which is kind of what we do.
Exactly.
Especially with, you know, larger accounts or media outlets or something that we're following for a certain tidbit or strand of news that maybe we're done following or something. But when it comes to friendships, you think this is a very personal rollout.
It might be a personal rollout, and I feel like people really take it to heart. It could be for a professional reason too, right? Oh, I'm following this person for whatever professional needs. We met at an event, we're networking, cool, now we're friends on Instagram, but let's just say you don't want to see the content that they're constantly posting, but you do want to maintain that relationship. Well, that's one cool way to still kind of maintain it. Yes, you won't be seeing their content anymore, but at least like in the back of their minds, they'll say, oh, you know what, we're still friends, we still have this relationship that's open. I feel like a lot of times now people take it too hard with this whole unfollowing situation, and that essentially deads any kind of relationship.
It's tricky. It
I've
is.
heard funky little stories, just personal ones of scenarios like that happening. So it's like, you know what? Let's alleviate this stress and let's just incorporate this mute button.
Yeah.
Kind of like Twitter, because Twitter has that. You can essentially mute
Yeah.
accounts that you follow because you're sick and tired of seeing the amount of tweets that they put out a day. So why not mute them? And then you can easily unmute them. So
all these, I mean, there's always so many new things. Always want to stay on top of what's going on in social media. Also today, guys, is the 1-year anniversary of the Manchester bombing. You remember that Ariana Grande concert? She tweeted this morning, obviously most notable in sort of sympathy, condolences of what happened, saying, thinking of you all today and every day. I love you with all of me, and am sending you all of the light and warmth I have to offer on this challenging day. Again, the 1-year anniversary of that bombing in Manchester, right after a concert concluded. I remember that. I remember it was like it was yesterday. It was last year.
Absolutely.
Can't believe it.
I cannot believe it's been a year. 22 people died from this tragic, event that occurred. And I remember when she first came out, I forgot who she interviewed with, she really tried to hold back those tears.
I do. I remember that.
Remember when she held the benefit concert? I don't know if you guys remember, but she teamed up with a lot of her celeb friends, and they essentially had a free concert in honor of all of the victims over in the UK. So with its anniversary coming out this year, she was actually quick to tweet it out. I think it was like 12 something in the morning when she put out this message.
Yeah, the original really post about it.
This tweet from today.
Oh, from today.
Just expressing her love and, basically saying that you're in my heart. So I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, that is.
She obviously happening her concert. It's something she's always going to remember. So
interestingly, on sort of a softer note about this, it came out today or last night really, Entertainment News was breaking that she's now dating Pete Davidson from SNL. So in some romantic news, it's kind of cute to see them as a couple. He was, I think, formerly with Larry David's daughter, and there's just a lot of interesting things about her in the news and celebrity world because she's in the news today, but for a very somber reason, also because of this 1 year of the anniversary of the bombing at her concert. So really, definitely somber. Also somber right now, guys, is the fact that we're going into Memorial Day weekend. People are taking a look at some of these beautiful tributes. This one's in Phoenix. This is a video from earlier this morning. You can see like the brush or the bushes are kind of carved out into this phrase, fallen not forgotten, to memorialize the dead for Memorial Day, which is coming this weekend. And I was reading that tens of thousands of volunteers actually went out to put this in place.
Wow.
So it's a really beautiful tribute, and so many people contributing to that. I know even just around here, a lot of people go to, scoot into the camera. A lot of people go to Arlington Cemetery. They go right around our corner to Arlington, or to something else that sort of commemorates or memorializes the dead and those who have given their lives for our country. And they do that on this sort of solemn week, and they do it into the weekend too. So this sort of reminds me of that. People kind of going out there and donating their time, volunteering their efforts to this. So that was kind of a pretty tribute, I thought.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I wonder how long it took them. Do we know? To get
I
the whole
don't
like
know.
edges up and the carving of everything?
I don't know the details of it. I'll have to find that out. I know our Phoenix station was posting this earlier this morning, and thought it was a pretty video, so I was going to play some of it out
Nice little
for you guys. Yeah.
Right, like at the very least.
It totally is.
Yeah.
If you guys are watching us, let us know what's up and where you're from. We want to know who's on with us. I know it's some of the regular people who pop into our stream. If you're not one of the regular people, definitely become one. You can subscribe to our channel. We're here every day on the weekdays, just streaming for you the live news and whatever is happening. You can see our newsroom is kind of bustling today. There's some stuff going on. We're going to kind of see what happens, and obviously if anything breaks, we're going to bring you that video first and foremost.
Absolutely.
There were some other social media sort of stories that were big in the news, right? We were talking about something local, or what was it, Raisa, that you were posting about today?
So another one that happened, and it was all over social media yesterday. It was essentially a deaf couple that was on board a Frontier airline, and they got into it with another passenger who essentially punched their service dog in the face and allegedly punched the guy's woman who was pregnant in the stomach. So there's a whole altercation that occurred, and in defense, as they got off the airplane, the woman's boyfriend, I think I've seen it everywhere, that's husband, but it was confirmed her boyfriend, was waiting for him to get off the plane, and then that's when he threw punches as well. And in his defense, he was defending his wife, let alone his service dog. His wife was pregnant. He was punched in the stomach. So it was a whole big thing, and a lot of people are essentially outraged and disgusted at how an individual could lay his hands on a woman, let alone a service dog. And the reason why he punched the service dog was, quote unquote, because he was taking up too much room than he deserved.
For the dog.
For the dog.
My goodness.
So that was a big thing floating around social.
Trying to get it clear too in this video. We're trying to play it out. This is one of the deaf couple here. This is the man in the couple. Okay.
So this is.
There it is on repeat. So there he is, Matthew Silva, the boyfriend, and his girlfriend's pregnant.
Right there. Yes.
Okay.
Hazel Ramirez.
Wow.
And so the man that he had the altercation with is sitting down. And you can see him a little bit more when you pan over to the next video, where they actually do get into
Let's
a
click on
physical
over.
Fight.
This is another, is it a still or a video?
No, it's a video.
Oh, it is?
Probably a little one.
There we go. Yep.
It's a little laggy.
There it is.
So here they're already off the airplane. One of the flight attendants is trying to calm down Matthew and tell him, no, this needs to stop. And the man who assaulted his wife initially is in the bag. That's not him. He's in the bag, but he ends up coming out. And at that point, oh, there he is, right there with the glasses.
The older man with the glasses?
Wow.
There we go. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it was a big scenario. This happened in Orlando.
Orlando's airport, okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. How are people responding? I guess you have a lot of comments. People are talking about Frontier Airlines.
Yeah. A lot of people are really pissed off.
Yeah.
A lot of people are upset at how Frontier also handled the situation. So it's received a lot of backlash. Both Frontier, the airline, which I feel like already has an interesting relationship with people, and let alone this man who his hands on a pregnant woman. So that's that. And if you guys want to read a little bit more into it, you can just go to fox5dc.com and just search up what was it? Frontier,
altercation.
There you go.
You'll find it.
Search
it happened on Frontier.
It'll pop up.
That's such a bummer because you see people. There's so many stories about this, and now that people can easily whip out their phones and catch people in the act of doing these things, it's sort of like, okay, guys, like this is not going to go unnoticed. You're gonna see it. Oh, sorry about the volume. Hope it's better. Let's make sure we're up here. Okay, I hope it's high. We have our mics on high, so hopefully you can hear us.
Is my hair covered?
I didn't have the, I didn't actually put the video, the volume up for the video, but all right, we'll make sure our audio is good. But yeah, you do see so much more of this type of stuff reported because people are able to capture it as evidence. Absolutely. So they have it in their back pocket, they're whipping their phones out with everything. So that's a lot of the stuff that we cover, actually. We get a lot of videos in that people are like, hey, take notice of this, right?
Absolutely. Or they'll post it physically on their own personal pages, and then at that point, whoever that they're following, or whoever's following them, repost, retweet, whatever the case may be. So essentially that's how it goes viral. If it hits the heart, it's going to go viral. So that's essentially what happened. I believe one of our sister stations ended up reaching out to the man who's recording the video initially, and that's where the story just kind of spawned from. So,
amazing.
Yeah.
So in some a little lighter, happier news, obviously there were commencements around the country this week. Every day, really, this week, it's going to happen. We're going to see a lot of notable celebrities headlining or keynoting the remarks of these ceremonies. And one of the funniest ones, the one I loved, was this one that I showed you this morning. So check out this one. This is Kent State University, and this was Michael Keaton bringing his background back full circle in his commencement speech at Kent State. Check it out.
I've got one more thing to say, and it'll only take me a second. I've got 2 words that I want you all to remember. They're very important. And if I leave you with anything, I'm going to leave you with these 2 words. And those 2 words are, I'm Batman.
Yes.
So that was really cute. It's just a small little clip, but obviously, and the way he says it, that perfect voice of it, it's so good.
Oh, the memories. I want to go home and watch Batman now.
I know, I love it because he totally slowed down his tone and like changed it over. He was like, I'm just gonna do this one more time.
Because we're so used to that.
I know, different voices and different celebrities, right? Different people have put on that that character. So anyway, that was a cute one. So we're gonna see a lot of celebrities kind of have notable I'm sure like 1-liners or 2-liners. Here's Mike, one of our photogs, just saying hey. Oh yeah, we're looking at all sorts of videos right here. If you can see this in front of us, we have a billion screens. Yeah, we do have some local news. We're going to go to some of our top stories in a second here, including a female police officer that was shot and killed in Baltimore overnight, and there were some suspects on the run for a while. Now police have confirmed that they have suspects in custody. They're teenage suspects in Baltimore, which is a quite sad case.
There's so many.
I know you're looking at a lot.
Look at.
I know. Yeah, we are. Mike is one of our photogs. He is quite intrepid. He's going to be going out on some type of story today. What are you working on today? Some politics?
I think, Russian investigation, monitoring,
borders
monitoring, a couple of hearings. I haven't been privy to the entire story yet.
Oh.
I'll put something together.
Interesting.
We should have your own segments. Mike on the mic.
Mike on the mic.
Too punny,
Mike
too much
on the
extra.
mic.
Yeah, maybe I'll get
I think
segment sometimes.
I think you need to.
podcast.
Maybe.
Should we do a podcast?
Maybe.
What do you guys think? Weigh in, vote in.
Yes.
YouTube a podcast.
We're doing some podcasts. You guys can.
Banned me once. You think of
Yeah, you can check out the latest podcast actually on our website, fox5dc.com. We're always working on something, and some of our reporters are working on things. And if you were on with us earlier this week or last week, Bob Barnard sat down with us with his recent crime podcast story that he's doing, an investigation into the missing Hoggle children, Sarah and Jacob Hoggle, which was so fascinating for me to sit down with Bob and the father of those children, Troy, to kind of talk about that series and where it goes. And the podcast is really interesting, and it sort of ends, you know, it ends, but it's not finished yet because the story is still ongoing. And as they find out more details, they'll be bringing that to light as much as they can. So if you are a podcast lover, as a lot of us are, we love true crime and stuff, that's a really great one to check out on our website. And we're going to be having more in the future. So keep an ear out for Fox 5 podcasts that are coming to you shortly. But with that, those are some of my favorite videos from the morning.
Yeah.
So just wanted to kind of recap some of that. And I guess, Raisa, you're going to go work on some social media today.
Yeah, we're going to go dig a little bit deeper now and see what's popping on social media. And follow us on every platform, guys. Fox 5 DC is super simple and super easy. Guys. Super simple.
And we often kind of drag in, the latest tweets. We're going to bring in all the different digital media to bring you this live show as things happen. Again, today, right now, not a whole lot going on. We do have President Trump greeting and meeting the South Korean president at the White House. I believe we'll just get a quick shot of him greeting him, and then there's not much more there. But then we are anticipating that Zuckerberg conference, or that Zuckerberg testimony, the data scandal to the European Union Parliament. So checking that out next. So be ready for that. In just a few minutes, we're going to queue that up for you. So until then, check out some of our top stories, including we're going to lead with that Baltimore County officer who was killed yesterday, and the story package on that, and then a few other stories for you guys until we have some other live news. So we'll go from there to Zuckerberg to whatever else is live.
All right, guys.
Okay?
Bye.
All right, see ya.
Baltimore County, Maryland police are searching for those responsible for the death of an officer who responded to a call about a possible burglary involving 4 suspects.
Our officer was responding to that call. She encountered the suspects and she was critically injured. Our officer was transported to the Franklin Square Hospital, where she was pronounced deceased at 2:50 p.m.
The female officer encountered the suspects in a residential neighborhood. Witnesses reported hearing a pop and seeing the officer run over by a Jeep. It's unclear at this time if the officer's injuries were caused by gunshots or if she was run over by the vehicle. The incident prompted a massive manhunt for the suspects. 3 area elementary schools were placed on alert status, and local residents advised to shelter in place. During the search, officials discovered the black Jeep at the center of the investigation.
We can confirm that this Jeep was involved in this crime. This was the suspicious vehicle that was called, and this was the vehicle that our suspects were either in or fleeing from shortly after the officer was injured.
The Jeep is now undergoing forensic analysis. The fatal incident prompting the police chief to weigh in on the increasing danger for law enforcement.
The number of officers who have died in the line of duty is up this year. We're telling everybody, be on your toes, don't be complacent.
Officials say the officer was wearing a body camera at the time of the incident. That footage is being reviewed. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
Another outburst from the Kilauea volcano. Lava could be seen spewing out of the fissure Monday following a new eruption. Authorities say the ash plume reached 7,000 feet. All this as lava quickly flows into the ocean, creating lays. Officials warn of thick clouds filled with glass particles that are potentially fatal if inhaled. The new activity has led to more volcanic vents and more chances for the molten rock to seep up out of the ground. You can see deep gorges and pavement near residential communities. Meantime, local businesses have their own concerns.
We've noticed less foot traffic, especially downtown.
Places like Hawaii depend heavily on tourism. Business owners are realizing firsthand it doesn't take much to scare people away.
I think the misconception, the volcano is affecting the whole island when it's really a concentrated area.
Municipalities also stand to lose out, if only because of extra personnel. Fire, police, and other essential workers are pulling 12-hour shifts.
That overtime cost may run into the millions.
Hawaii County's managing director is hoping state legislators will tap into federal funds. But it's the tourism that really matters, according to those whose livelihood depends on it.
Everything is status quo here on the Big Island. Only, 5% of the island is being affected by this, so nothing to worry about.
The Big Island Tourism Board says it expects to lose at least $5 million through midsummer alone. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
Well, these are the three big players right now. North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who may be something of a holdout on this proposed summit, and then South Korea's Moon Jae-in, who is meeting with President Trump today at the White House to see if they can get this whole thing back on track. Trying to get inside of Kim Jong-un's head is never easy, but that is one of the reasons why South Korea's Moon Jae-in arrived in the United States yesterday to strategize with President Trump, who has made it clear that he wants this summit to happen.
It's very important that that President Moon and President Trump and their teams sort of come together. It's almost like a huddle, and they need to come up with their new game plan moving forward.
And there are real sticking points in the current game plan. North Korea may not be willing to give up its nuclear program, which from the U.S. perspective is the reason for the summit in the first place.
These sorts of things take twists and turns. That's not uncommon with North Korea. And so all we can do is try to be in a state of readiness.
A state of readiness in North Korea, too, where international journalists have begun to arrive to perhaps witness the destruction of the country's nuclear test site later this week. If it happens, it's an important signal from Kim that he may be open to talks. But there are concerns at the White House, too, about giving up too much to make this happen.
It would be a great mistake for Kim Jong-un to think he could play Donald Trump.
But history is replete with examples of North Korea saying one thing and doing another. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
You're okay. Two sisters with one unbreakable bond.
That's amazing what her sister did. She did not leave her side. She tried to get her body in the way so that the baby wouldn't float away.
Two horses stranded after wandering into what turned into an overnight rescue mission. SRP guards were the first to notice the two horses stuck in the canal off Loop 202 and Thomas and Higley roads. That's when they immediately called the Salt River Wild Horse Management Group and local firefighters.
They were really drowning. They had been swimming against the stream for like 2 hours. And even though they're Salt River wild horses, they were getting exhausted.
At one point, the two horses floated to the deep end of the canal, and with each horse weighing up to 1,000 pounds, that made the operation even more difficult for rescuers and technical crews.
They were not going to last that much longer. So at that point, firefighters really jumped into action. We had to use some ropes, and I think it was literally 12, 13 firefighters that just pulled them out.
After rescuers pulled the sisters to safety, the Salt River Management Group took the horses to a safe location where big and little sister can now rest and recover.
The younger one does have some wounds and it looks a little bit bloody, but hopefully it's superficial. And so we're just going to give her some antibiotics and some pain meds, and let's just hope that they're going to be okay.
Carmen Blackwell, Fox 10 News.
Jupiter and every other planet in our solar system orbits the sun in counterclockwise fashion. That's why astronomers were amazed to see this asteroid highlighted in green going in the opposite direction. It's going against the flow, they believe, because it's not from around here.
So it's an asteroid, and astronomers are pretty sure that it's from another solar system that was captured probably early on in the formation of our solar system.
That means the asteroid 2015 BZ509, nicknamed BZ, has been here for 4.5 billion years. And while BZ is no threat to collide with Earth, it demonstrates something Dan McIntosh preaches to his students.
Called solar system pinball.
McIntosh says there are billions of asteroids and comets in our solar system, and now apparently other solar systems, constantly and unpredictably pinballing around.
And just knowing that there's all that stuff out there, again, the pinball, the ammunition to hit the Earth, it's all out there, and most of it's in a happy orbit going around the sun far away, but every once in a while things pass by.
happened 5 years ago. A small asteroid exploded over Russia. McIntosh says it could happen again in 100 years, or who knows, maybe 100 million years.
But more importantly, we're basically spending zero on monitoring for Earth-crossing asteroids.
So while BZ orbiting backwards in Jupiter's path is a harmless space oddity, McIntosh says it should motivate the government to be more prepared in this game of solar system pinball.
Eventually, they'll pick up one that has a chance that it's going to hit us.
The United States will implement an aggressive campaign to economically isolate and punish Iran.
These will indeed end up being the strongest sanctions in history when we are complete.
Borrowing a tactic and even a name from the administration's North Korea policy, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo promises an historic pressure campaign against Iran. State Department officials say they will continue working with allies to create a global coalition to counter Iran. Secretary Pompeo also warned companies from allied countries conducting business with Iran that the United States would penalize them if they continued working with Iran. All part of what the administration says is a robust strategy to address Iran's behavior beyond nuclear activity.
We will track down Iranian operatives and their Hezbollah proxies operating around the world, and we will crush them. Iran will never again have carte blanche to dominate the Middle East.
Pompeo listed a dozen U.S. demands. Among them, Iran must abandon its nuclear work in perpetuity, provide international inspectors unqualified access, halt its ballistic missile program, release detained Americans, and end support for Middle East militant groups. In exchange, the secretary says the U.S. would lift sanctions and welcome Iran's return to the global economy. In response, Iran's foreign minister tweeted, quote, U.S. diplomacy sham is merely a regression to old habits, imprisoned by delusions and failed policies, dictated by corrupt special interests. It repeats the same wrong choices and will thus reap the same ill rewards. British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, speaking just ahead of Secretary Pompeo, says a larger agreement incorporating all of Iran's aggressive behavior won't be very easy to achieve in a reasonable time. At the State Department, Rich Edson, Fox News.
Police here say that their suspect had more than $6,000 worth of stolen stuff. They add that more than half of that was in plants from 3 different stores. Police say they found all of this in 41-year-old Thomas Alden's garage when they served a search warrant Saturday morning. Vancouver police were tipped off about the thefts by an employee and loss prevention officers at this Fred Meyer in Fisher's Landing on the east end of Vancouver. They say Alden was caught on surveillance video taking hanging baskets and potted plants. Court documents reveal 158 of those plants were found at his southeast Vancouver home, many with the tags still on them. The documents also show he told his wife he had been working overnight at a nursery, and that's where the plants were coming from. But perhaps the most striking part of all of this, investigators believe Alden had been doing this for the last 2 to 3 years. The court documents read he'd been captured on Fred Meyer store's security cameras, and there were advertisements for the plants on sites like Craigslist that listed Alden's home address. Police say as they were searching the property, people were still stopping by to try and buy plants. Police also tell us that during their search, they found a meth pipe and meth. We did speak to his family today. They said they did not wish to comment, saying they just simply didn't know what to say. Alden is being held on $5,000 bail.
Demand that McDonald's be held accountable to enforce its zero tolerance policy on sexual harassment. We need a safe working environment. We need someone to come to talk to when we feel sexually harassed and when we feel there's a problem. To make sure McDonald's and other fast food workers who experience sexual harassment know where to turn, the 5 for 15 is launching a hotline to help McDonald's and other fast food workers who are harassed to get legal help that they need. The number is 844-384-4495. And we, along with the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, encourage workers who have experienced sexual harassment to fill out the intake form on the fund's website. Before I end, on behalf of the 5 for 15 National Organizing Committee and thousands of fast food workers across the country, I thank the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund who encourage workers who have experienced any kind of harassment. which is critical in our efforts to hold McDonald's accountable for creating a safe workplace for everyone in its restaurant. You will now be hearing from a few workers who have experienced sexual harassment. They are brave workers. You'll hear from Sharon. I'm sorry. No, we're going to hear from, let's go with Kim. What's your name again? Ariana Alvarez. Ariana Alvarez. Thank you. Hello, my name is Kimberly Lawson, and I work at McDonald's. I am here to tell you that this company has a sexual harassment problem. Working at McDonald's is hard enough already. I only make $8.75 an hour and cannot afford stable housing. Survival for me and my daughter is a daily challenge. I should not have peaked upon all of that. The heavy stress of sexual harassment, no woman should. When I started a year ago, I'm sorry. We got your back. When I started 1 year ago, there was no mention of sexual harassment training, no mention of sexual harassment policies, and no mention of a phone number to call if we experience sexual harassment. McDonald's, a multi-billion-dollar company, does not seem to care. I hope that by coming together to tell our stories, we can force them to care. I feel as if McDonald's does not respect our right to be free from sexual harassment. Here's my story. I have experienced harassment at McDonald's not just once but twice. Last fall, a manager repeatedly made sexual comments towards me. He talked about my body, including telling me he told me I had a nice body and a big butt, and telling me to leave my boyfriend. Because he was a manager, I felt trapped. I felt like I had no choice but to tolerate it. Though I rejected his advances as politely as I could over and over again, they persisted. The only way I could avoid them was to try to rearrange my schedule so that I would not see him at all. I have also experienced sexual harassment from a coworker. He stares at me, stands uncomfortably close to me, brushes up against me, touches my butt, and gives me gifts, which makes me uncomfortable. I reported his behavior to the general manager, but nothing was done. No woman should have to experience what I experienced. This is part of the reason why I and so many other women are fighting for union rights. We know we are stronger together, and with the union, we have the strength to protect one another and demand the justice we all deserve. Amen. Thank you so much. Like I said, these are very brave workers. And now we're going to talk to Sharon Tijani, who's an executive director of Times Up Legal Defense Fund.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. My name is Sharon Tijani. I'm the director of the Times Up Legal Defense Fund, and I'm so excited to be here today with all of you. The Times Up Legal Defense Fund is proud to help fund legal representation for the brave women who have come forward about their experiences of sexual harassment at McDonald's. And we're grateful to Fight for 15 for identifying these women and finding experienced attorneys to represent them. The women at McDonald's are telling horrific and heartbreaking stories. These stories reveal the lived experiences shared by millions of other workers, mostly women, across the country. Since Time's Up Legal Defense Fund started in January, over 2,700 workers have come through our intake pipeline seeking attorneys. They represent every type of job and industry you can think of. We've heard from hotel workers, police officers, members of the military, teachers, grocery store employees, security guards, fast food workers, nurses, musicians, farm workers, and even astronauts. When I read their stories, you cannot help but be profoundly moved. The workers describe being grabbed, roped, touched, forced to hear sexually aggressive and belittling language, and being assaulted while simply trying to do their jobs. Some tell how they reported their abuse to managers and supervisors, but nothing happened. For others, their hours were cut, their shifts were cut, and some were fired for speaking up. The workers also described the pressures of trying to hold onto their jobs so they can take care of their families. Many include details about serious depression they've developed, and some have been diagnosed with PTSD. Frequently, they write in their intakes in all caps, "Please help me." The Time's Up Legal Defense Fund was created to give workers, especially those in low-wage jobs, a practical tool to challenge sexual harassment. The fund, which is housed and administered by the National Women's Law Center Fund, connects workers to lawyers who may be able to take their cases. The fund also helps finance fees and costs of select cases and investigations, as we're doing in this case for these women. These charges recently filed by women in cities all over the country against McDonald's represents the kind of work the fund supports. The fast food industry has an atrocious record on sexual harassment. Polls and studies indicate that 40% of workers experience it. By speaking out against the world's largest fast food chain, the women at McDonald's are taking a powerful stand against sexual harassment. Their voices and their stories will resonate across America. The Time's Up Legal Defense Fund is proud to stand with these courageous women who have come forward at great risk to call out their harassers. We will keep standing with women against harassment, and we will demand accountability from companies like McDonald's. The reason is simple. No worker, ever, should have to endure abuse for a paycheck. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Sharon. Next, we'll hear from another attorney, Meredith Johnson. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Meredith Johnson. I'm an attorney, and I'm really proud to be involved in this movement. The Me Too movement has called attention to... Yeah.
Can you stand in front of those microphones?
Just stand like right here.
Yeah.
Don't want to have my back to anyone.
Thank you very much.
All right. No problem. My name is Meredith Johnson. I'm an attorney at Altshuler-Berzon, and I'm proud to be involved in this movement. The Me Too movement has called attention to long, festering problems of sexual harassment and sexual assault. Problems that affect women in all sectors of our society, and that persist in the fast food industry. A study from 2016 reported that, on average, 2 out of every 5 women working in fast food have been sexually harassed on the job. And yet, as that same study reported, women who speak out about harassment often face negative consequences from their employers. Because many women working fast food live paycheck to paycheck, often supporting children or other family members, walking away from the harassment is often not a viable option, leaving women little choice but to remain silent. The brave women who are here speaking out today are helping to end that silence. We believe it is time for fast food companies to start hearing these women's voices and to help put an end to workplace harassment. McDonald's is one of the largest restaurant chains on earth. We think it has the capacity to make real changes in the workplace and to take action to make sure workers are protected from harassment on the job, both in its corporate stores and in its franchise stores. McDonald's just has to choose to make this a priority. If it does, McDonald's can use its enormous power and influence to guarantee safe and dignified workplaces for all of its employees. We believe that putting an end to sexual harassment in the fast food industry starts with McDonald's agreeing to make real changes. Here's what we think real change means. McDonald's should enforce a meaningful zero-tolerance policy against sexual harassment. McDonald's should require trainings for managers and employees on what a zero-tolerance policy looks like in action. And McDonald's should create a safe and effective method for receiving and responding to complaints from employees who report sexual harassment. We are grateful to the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, which is helping to shine a light on the problem of sexual harassment in the fast food industry by supporting the McDonald's workers who are standing up for their rights to be free of sexual harassment. Thank you. All right, thank you, Meredith. Now we're going to
out to another McDonald's worker. She is from New Orleans, Tanya Carroll.
Hi everyone, thanks for listening today. Thank y'all, I appreciate all the love. My name is Tanya Harrell, I am 22 years old. McDonald's workers from New Orleans are struggling. I've worked at McDonald's since 2015. I get paid $8.15 an hour. I'm speaking out today because last year I repeatedly experienced sexual harassment while working at McDonald's. It first began when one of the male co-workers and I struck up a platonic friendship. But soon as he began verbally harassing me and even grabbing my breasts in private areas at work. I'm sorry, I'm just... It's all right. We all here for you. I refused his advances and tried to avoid him, but he would not stop. When I reported the problem, the supervisors didn't care. They did not take it very seriously as I did. One of them told me I was giving sex appeal to him, and all I did was just come to work and do my job. And this response left me feeling helpless and afraid, with a lot of fear. Shortly after this, a different male co-worker forced me into the bathroom. The men's bathroom, I'm sorry. He pinned me against the wall, exposed himself, and tried to force me into sexual intercourse. I came up with the word anti-rape because the rape didn't happen before the manager called, he stopped. And as he exposed himself, I was terrified. Because my supervisors didn't do anything about the harassment, I experienced it in the past, and I didn't even report this incident since workers... I didn't report this second incident since workers like me do not have a union rights at McDonald's. That ain't right. We have no one else to turn to when we feel rejected. We don't have protection, and we're not encouraged to speak out. When sexual harassment is not addressed in the workplace, it sends workers a message that it's okay for our bodies to be violated in the workplace, and it's okay for our self-respect to be shattered. I am a person, I am a woman, and I matter. I'm speaking out today to join the voice with the voices of others who understand the pain of being unheard. McDonald's has incredible influences, and if they choose to, they can be forced for good. So today we are taking a stand and demanding that McDonald's will be held accountable for everything they have done. Thank you.
Like I said, these are very brave workers coming out here and speaking about their stories today. Next, we will have Amy Beagleson, an attorney at Alton Golden.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you all for being here and thanks for having us. I have good news. I'm the last lawyer today. So far, a network of attorneys from around the country, including Altshuler-Burzon, Alton and Golden, Mackenzie, Canzano, Smith, Radke, and Brault, and the Heartland Center for Jobs and Freedom, have filed charges for women in 7 states. We filed charges in California and Florida, Michigan and Louisiana, Missouri, North Carolina, and of course right here in Illinois. These filings are just the beginning of our strategy. We hope to talk to more McDonald's workers and continue our investigation. But even with this network of attorneys working together to give voice to these women's stories, we expect that employees will still face barriers to speaking out. Some employees may feel like they have to choose between standing up for their rights and bringing home a paycheck. Undocumented workers may fear deportation if they speak out. Other employees might be afraid that they will not be believed or that they will be ridiculed. But all workers are entitled to their dignity as people and to their rights under the law. So here's a little procedural background. Sexual harassment cases don't begin in court. Before they can be heard by a judge, they must be investigated by a federal agency, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or EEOC. We will ask that as the EEOC undertakes this investigation, it consolidates or coordinates the charges that have been filed and treat this as a systemic investigation. The charges that we are filing for our clients include allegations detailing sexually explicit language, sexually harassing behavior. Some charges include allegations about our clients being touched inappropriately. Often our charges include allegations that despite being given notice of this conduct, the employers did nothing to address the situation. In one case, a client alleges that when she told her manager, "My name is not sexy," he sent her home an hour and a half into her shift. He wouldn't let her work the next day in retaliation for her pushing back against his harassment. One charge brought by a client who was under 18 alleges that she was harassed by a much older coworker. She reported this to management, and when she did, she was warned not to speak out. He said this is a battle that she would never win. We'll see about that. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to know that we have, strong people like that behind us. And if we could just, we're gonna have one more speaker, but we could just have a moment of silence, please. This is very strong topics we're talking about. Thank you guys so much. We're going to hear from our last speaker, Ariana Grande, who's a St. Louis McDonald's worker.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ariana Grande, and I'm a 15-year-old McDonald's worker. I started working at my store in St. Louis, Missouri in 2017 of October, and I am paid about $8 an hour. Almost immediately, one of my male co-workers began to sexually harass me at work. I told him I wasn't interested, but his behavior only got worse. His comments about my body and the things he would do to me made me deeply uncomfortable. It was so drastic that I'm embarrassed to speak out about it today. When I told my manager he didn't take it seriously, he just said, "You will never win this battle." McDonald's is running ads right now that claim it is committed to be America's best first job. But at McDonald's, I've been subject to constant sexual harassment, brushed off by many managers and paid a poverty wage. I know I'm not the only person who has experienced these problems working at McDonald's. I've heard about a report found that 40% of women in fast food are sexually harassed. Women are afraid to speak out of fear that in retaliation their hours will be cut, or even worse, they will be fired. It's scary to file a complaint, it's scary to speak out today, but I hope to inspire more women to come forward by standing together. I know workers like me can make McDonald's understand that sexual harassment should never be a part of this job.
Thank you so much, Brianna.
You got your back.
Clearly, we all have everyone's back here. And as McDonald's workers, we don't have the protection of a union. So to speak out on an issue, something like sexual harassment, it's very scary. It's scarring, as you can tell today. Women have tears in their eyes from going to work and earning a paycheck. It shouldn't happen that way. But we must speak out. Despite the spotlight on the issue in Hollywood and in the media, little has changed for the frontline workers, just like us. McDonald's is the largest restaurant chain on earth. And we believe it should use its enormous power and influence to guarantee safe and dignified workplaces for all employees, just like they claim to do so now. Let me tell you, it's not safe, it's not dignified, they disrespect you, there's harassment, clearly. And I know there's a lot more women who go through this but are too scared to speak out. It's ridiculous. We hope that our actions today start to bring out this much needed change. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody who came, and the lawyers will be available for questioning, not the workers. So, thank you.
So it's a pretty dramatic scene, guys, in Chicago. This is at the headquarters of McDonald's in downtown Chicago, where it recently relocated. It's in the West Loop neighborhood of Chicago. It used to be in Oak Brook, Illinois. But this movement here actually started yesterday. It was a part of a labor movement called Fight for 15, which is a group trying to fight for better union rights and better pay for some of the McDonald's workers. Now, hundreds of people have come from all over the country who are employees of this company to fight for this. And today it really took a turn more about sexual harassment. So you can see just many women getting up to take the stand to talk about their experience as an employee of McDonald's and what the company has or really has not done for them. Again, you heard them mention many times, they are not part of a union, so they don't get to employ those union rights that they would be able to if they were part of it. So it's them demanding that in conjunction with better pay, in conjunction with better advisement on what to do when these sexual harassment cases happen, when they occur, when they come to light. And you could see just a lot of people having quite harrowing emotional stories from their time working there and what they dealt with. So more on this, if we have any more coming up, we'll make sure we bring that to you live. But this, again, is in downtown Chicago, right outside the headquarters in the West Loop neighborhood of Chicago. I want to take you, though, over to Europe, where we have Mark Zuckerberg testifying. He's talking to the EU Parliament about that data scandal. So let's check it out.
To make these algorithms public in the future. Because when you have so much power about who is visible in the social media and who is not visible, that cannot be longer anymore a decision of a company. That is, I think, a decision for our societies. I think this is necessary, and I'm interested in your arguments why we shouldn't do so. In addition, I want to underline that between Europe and America, we have different understanding about what is allowed to publish and what is not allowed to publish. In Europe, for example, the question of videos and texts on radicalization by Islamists or the glorification of Nazi propaganda is unacceptable for us in Europe. In America, a lot of people would say that is covered by freedom of expression. So I see a lot of member states for the moment asking Facebook to voluntarily ban these messages. I think that is very submissive. We should not ask the company to do so, to delete it. I think we should clearly regulate clear rules, what is allowed in social networks in Europe and what not. And finally, during your testimony before the Congress, Senator Lindsey Graham asked you repeatedly the name of only one of your competitors, only one, without success. Probably you can give us today for the European market a competitor. Probably there is one in Europe if there is nobody in America. Is there today in Europe an alternative to Facebook for the services you are offering? WhatsApp and Instagram are already part of your empire, would you consider your company as a monopoly? And I have to say, as a politician, I believe in markets and rules, but I also want to stop all kinds of possible monopolies. And that's why I think it is time to discuss breaking Facebook monopoly, because it's already too much power in only one hand. So I ask you simply, and that is my final question, can you convince me not to do so?
Now, Mr. Udo Bullman, chair of the group, the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. You have the floor.
Mr. Zuckerberg, the reason we talk today is that your business practices allowed for the abuse of private data and for the misuse in order to manipulate for political purposes. You have mentioned the progress in European legislation. Are you ready to completely comply with the new regulation in Europe within the next 3 days? Because this is the 25th of this month when the General Data Protection Regulation enters into force. Can you guarantee that Facebook is in line with the new rules, and can you guarantee that you will not collect, use, and sell any data to third parties without proper consent? Especially if people want to come off Facebook, how quickly and under what conditions will their data be fully removed? We would like to know, how can you explain that the amount of false accounts is in a rise? In 2017, Facebook reported that 2 to 3% of all accounts were false accounts. In 2018, this is now 3 to 4%. What is Facebook doing to tackle the spread of especially sophisticated fake accounts, which allow for abuse of all sorts, especially when it comes to political manipulation? And can you perhaps give us the number of fake accounts that you have been deleted so far this year? I'm personally interested in the question of the forthcoming European elections. You mentioned experiences in France and in Germany, which came into existence under the pressure of the respective governments. How can you and will you guarantee that no manipulation from foreign and hostile interference sides of the democratic process of your platform ahead of the forthcoming vote can happen? Are you ready to guarantee that for the whole European Union? And in which way will you adapt your business model that can be prohibited from the very instance? I firmly believe that we are at the crossroads and in a critical situation, because your business practices touched upon two basic values of our societies. First of all, the personal data, which became perhaps the most important asset in modern media society. And secondly, on the right of self-government of sovereign nations. This is what it is about, and we are looking for your answers.
Now, Mr. Kamal, co-chair of the European Conservative Group. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerberg. Thank you very much for coming to the European Parliament today and for agreeing to send your legal and technical expert to the Civil Liberties Committee. And can I also thank those here in the Parliament who have made this meeting possible. Now, please rest assured, I'm not here to try and score any cheap political points or to have to do any stunts here, but I want to concentrate what is important for the many people who have contacted me when they knew I would be here in the room today. Look, I'm a libertarian-minded conservative, and I believe in market-led solutions and that bureaucracy shouldn't starve innovation. I'm also very tech-oriented. I quite often joke that I used to be a geek. I'm now the father of geeks. But where business takes advantage of their users or consumers, then they come to us as politicians and they expect us to do something. They at least say something, but also do something. And what happened with the Cambridge Analytica case has quite rightly raised serious concerns. Now, many of us use social media, Indeed, I crowdsourced some of the questions today using social media before I came here. But what's really interesting has been the public outcry over so-called shadow profiles, where Facebook collects and stores data about internet users that don't have or use Facebook. Now, I understand that Facebook admits that you collect this data and then store it for about 10 days. But given that this data is collected continuously and that most people use the internet almost every day, then in effect, this becomes a continuous cycle. Now, I believe in self-responsibility, and I know that by having my own Facebook account, I have to take some responsibility for what I put on my own Facebook account. But what happens if I don't have a Facebook account? Is the only way of preventing Facebook collecting my data to avoid the internet altogether? Or is there another way? How can non-users stop Facebook collecting their data? And what do you do with the non-Facebook data? Do you commercialize it? And given you do that, is it morally acceptable, do you think, in your opinion, to collect non-Facebook users' data without them knowing what you do with it? And are they able, if I'm a non-Facebook user, am I able to see the data that you've collected on me? And if not, why not? Thank you. I look forward to your answers.
Now, Mr. Guy Verhofstadt, the chair of the group of the Alliance of the Liberals and Democrats in Europe. You have the floor.
Thank you, President. First of all, my apologies. I came in the middle of your explanation, but I was saved by Facebook Live. So I followed you on Facebook Live, and that was my rescue today because of strikes in Paris. So I have to tell you, Mr. Zuckerberg, you remember me, in fact, a protagonist of a book. Maybe you know that book, and the name of the protagonist, Mr. Calden. Calden is the protagonist in a book of Dave Eggert, as you know, Circle. And in that book, it's about a big data company. The data company was out of control. Not even the owner has control on it. And that data is used in elections. And it seems me very near to the reality. Also, the fact that maybe you have less control or no control about your own company for the moment, because you have to apologize now. I think in total, you apologize now 15 or 16 times the last decade. In 2003, you started. Every year, you have one or other wrongdoing or problem with Facebook, and you have to face the reality and to say sorry and to say that you're going to fix it. Last year, I think it was twice that you apologized, and this year, 3 times already. And we are still in the month of May, so it's a little bit early in the year. So what my point is about that is, are you capable to fix it? And if you have already confronted so many dysfunctions of the system, it has to be clearly a problem. And the only way, in my opinion, to do it, and I'm a liberal, a free marketeer, is to have public regulation to do so. It's a little bit like with the banks in the 2006, 2007, 2008. They said also, no, we're going to do self-regulation. Don't bother. No, we're going to do it ourselves. The reality is that they didn't do them themselves, and it was needed to have tough regulation. I have here an Avas petition where 1 million, more than 1 million citizens in Europe ask you to do that and to accept regulation and not to continue with the idea, oh, we're going to self-regulate. And I come then to my concrete questions. The first is about the GDPR and European privacy standards. You have told that you're going to apply them, but are you telling the truth, in fact, to us? Are you telling the truth? Because since the outbreak of Cambridge Analytica, you have massively transferred European data of non-European citizens out from Europe, away from the European service to a service otherwise in Europe. I have to tell you, that's against the regulation, against GDPR, and against the existing directive in Europe, 95/46, who is still applicable. And the same that what Mr. Kamal is saying is happening, in fact, with European non-Facebook users.
You guys want to jump in here and just jump over to President Trump, who is greeting the South Korean president right now in the White House. This is tape from just moments ago. Check out what he had to say there in that room.
Excellent people to work with for the Trump administration. And we will have some pretty good news, I think, on trade and we'll be discussing other things. But the big topic will be Singapore and the meeting, see what happens, whether or not it happens. If it does, that'll be great. It'll be a great thing for North Korea. And if it doesn't, that's okay too. Whatever it is, it is. But I look forward to spending quite a bit of time with the president, and I think a lot of good things will happen. I want to thank everybody for being here. Mr. President, great honor. Thank you. Thank you.
대단히 감사합니다. 오늘 문 대통령님을 백악관에 환영하게 되어서 매우 기쁘게 생각합니다. 문 대통령과 나는 지금 오래 또 알아왔고 아주 좋은 친구가 되었습니다. 우리는 여러 가지 문제에 있어서 협력을 하고 있습니다. 물론 북한 문제가 가장 큰 협력 의제입니다. 그 외에도 한국과의 무역도 논의할 것입니다. 한국과의 무역은 지금 재협상 중에 있고 지금 아주 훌륭한 협상 상대국으로서 협상이 잘 진행되고 있는 중이며 곧 좋은 소식이 있을 것 같습니다. 물론 아주 중요한 싱가포르 회담에 대해서도 논의를 할 것입니다. 싱가포르 회담이 열릴지 안 열릴지는 두고 봐야 될 것입니다. 만일 그것이 열린다면 아주 좋은 일이 될 것이고 또 북한에도 아주 좋은 일이 될 것입니다. 만일 열리지 않는다면 그것도 괜찮다고 봅니다. 문 대통령께 여러 가지 협력에 대해서 감사드리고 또 오늘 좋은 회담이 되기를 바랍니다.
예, 감사합니다. 국내 일정이 매우 바쁘고 또 북미 정상회담을 앞둔 중요한 시기에 이렇게 많은 시간 내주시고 또 따뜻하게 환대해 주셔서 감사드립니다. 먼저 며칠 전 텍사스 고등학교에서 벌어진 총격 사건으로 무고한 희생자들이 발생한 것에 대해서 우리 트럼프 대통령님과 또 미국 국민들께 위로의 말씀을 드립니다. 또한 미국민 억류자들이 북한으로부터 무사하게 귀환한 것에 대해서 다시 한번 축하합니다. 힘을 통한 평화라는 트럼프 대통령님의 강력한 비전과 리더십 덕분에 사상 최초의 북미 정상회담이 열리게 되었고 한반도의 완전한 비핵화와 세계 평화라는 꿈에 성큼 다가설 수 있게 되었습니다. 바로 트럼프 대통령이시기 때문에 지난 수십 년간 아무도 해내지 못했던 일을 바로 트럼프 대통령께서 해내시리라고 저는 확신합니다. 우리 한국과 한반도의 운명과 미래에도 대단히 중요한 일이기 때문에 저도 최선을 다해서 북미 정상회담의 성공을 돕고 또 트럼프 대통령과 언제까지나 함께 할 것이라는 것을 약속드립니다. 감사합니다.
Well, I would like to thank you, Mr. President, for your warm hospitality and for sharing much of your time with me. I know you have a very busy domestic calendar, as well as the all-important US-North Korea summit approaching. I heard the tragic news that many innocent lives were lost due to the shootings in a Texas high school a few days ago. So I'd like to convey my condolences to you and the American people. On a brighter note, I would like to congratulate you for the safe return of the American citizens who had been detained in North Korea. Thanks to your vision of achieving peace through strength, as well as your strong leadership, we are looking forward to the first ever US-North Korea summit, and we find ourselves standing one step closer to the dream of achieving complete denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula and world peace. All this was possible because of you, Mr. President, and I have no doubt that you will be able to accomplish a historic feat that no one had been able to achieve in the decades past. I have to say that the fate and the future of the Korean Peninsula hinge on this, and as such, I'll spare no effort to the end to support the success of the upcoming US-North Korea summit and stand with you all along the way, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Mr. President,
I do think he's serious. I think he would like to see that happen. At the same time, he's going into a future that's different from what they've had. But I think he's absolutely very serious, yes.
Mr. President, can you...
1 second, Go ahead. Go ahead. John?
Can you give us an update, sir, just on where things stand with the summit? President Moon's National Security Advisor on the way here seemed to think that things are on track and that this will indeed happen.
Well, we're moving along, and we'll see what happens. There are certain conditions that we want, and I think we'll get those conditions. And if we don't have the meeting. And frankly, it has a chance to be a great meeting for North Korea and a great meeting for the world. If it doesn't happen, maybe it'll happen later. Maybe it'll happen at a different time. But we will see. But we are talking. The meeting scheduled, as you know, on June 12th in Singapore. And whether or not it happens, you'll be knowing pretty soon. But we're talking right now.
Do you have an idea of how denuclearization would take place? Would it be?
I do. I have a very strong idea how it takes place. And it must take place. That's what we're talking about. It must take place. So, but I have a very strong idea, and I have very strong opinions on the subject. I also have very strong opinions that North Korea has a chance to be a great country. And it can't be a great country under the circumstances that they're living right now. But North Korea has a chance really to be a great country, and I think they should seize the opportunity, and we'll soon find out whether or not they want to do that. Yes?
President, have you spoken to Kim Jong-un?
I don't want to say that.
Do you
I don't want to
trust
say
Kim Jong-un going into these meetings?
There's no reason to discuss that. I can say this, that for a short period of time, we've been dealing with North Korea, and it's been a good experience. We have 3 hostages back. They're home. They're living with their families. They're very, very happy. And so I can only speak for a very short period of time, but it's been a relationship that seems to be working, and we'll see how long it continues to work. Hopefully it's going to work for a long time, John.
Unrelated, Mr. President, can you tell us more about your meeting with Rod Rosenstein and Director Ray yesterday?
No, it's just a very routine meeting. As you know, the Congress would like to see documents opened up. A lot of people are saying they had spies in my campaign. If they had spies in my campaign, that would be a disgrace to this country. That would be one of the biggest insults that anyone's ever seen, and it would be very illegal, aside from everything else. It would make probably every political event ever look like small potatoes. So we want to make sure that there weren't. I hope there weren't, frankly. But some man got paid based on what I read in the newspapers and on what you reported. Some person got paid a lot of money. That's not a normal situation, the kind of money you're talking about. So hopefully that would be, and I think the Department of Justice wants to get down to it, and I can tell you Congress does. So hopefully they'll all be able to get together. General Kelly's going to be setting up a meeting between Congress and the various representatives, and they'll be able to open up documents, take a look, and find out what happened. But if they had spies in my campaign, during my campaign for political purposes, that would be unprecedented in the history of our country. Yes.
Can you give us an update on trade talks with China? Is there a deal about ZTE, and what specifically are you doing?
No. President Xi and I have a great relationship, as President Moon can attest, but there is no deal. We will see what happens. We are discussing deals. We're discussing various deals. We can do a 301. We can do where we don't need China, where we can just say, look, this is what we want. This is what we think is fair. That's always a possibility if a negotiated deal doesn't work out. As I said, we lost $500 billion a year for many years. And then it varied from $100 billion to $500 billion. When you're losing $500 billion a year, you can't lose in terms of a negotiation. It's really easy to win. But I want this to be a great deal for the United States, and I want it to be a very good deal for China, too, if that's possible. It may not be possible. As far as ZTE is concerned, the president asked me to look into it, and I am doing that. And don't forget, for the ones that say, oh, gee, maybe Trump is getting a little bit easy, ZTE, we closed it. It wasn't another administration. It was this administration that closed it. It's a phone company, for those that don't know, a very large phone company. But it's also a phone company that buys a large portion of its parts that make up these phones that are sold all over the world from American companies. So when you do that, you're really hurting American companies also. So I'm looking at it, but we were the ones that closed it. It wasn't done by previous administrations. It was done by us. So we'll see what happens. But as a favor to the president, I am absolutely taking a look at it. A lot of the stories on trade were incorrectly written, and I'm not saying that's the reporter's fault. I'm saying that I'm not talking about the trade deal. I don't like to talk about deals until they're done, so we'll see what happens. But that deal, I will say, that deal could be much different from the deal that finally emerges. And it may be a much better deal for the United States than
Do you have confidence in Rod Rosenstein?
what's your next question, please?
I'm a reporter from
Excuse me, I have the president of South Korea here.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question
He doesn't
for
want to hear
President
these questions, if you don't mind.
Trump. I'm a reporter from South Korea. How much confidence and trust do you have in my president in playing the mediator role in resolving this North Korea issue and the union from the sunset?
I have great confidence in your president. I think that he's brought a different perspective to the talks with North Korea. He wants to be able to make a deal. Now, you've had some very hard line administrations, and you have President Moon, and you've had others before President Moon who also had more or less this attitude. I think he's a very capable person. I think he's an extremely competent man. I think he's a very good person, and I think he wants to have what's good for the Korean Peninsula, not just North or South, for the entire Korean Peninsula. So I have tremendous confidence in President Moon, and I think that his way, the way he is, really is helping us to potentially make a deal. Whether the deal gets made or not, who knows? It's a deal. Who knows? You never know about deals. You go into deals that are 100% certain it doesn't happen. You go into deals that have no chance and it happens, and sometimes happens easily. I've made a lot of deals. I know deals, I think, better than anybody knows deals. You never really know, and that's why I say to you. But I will tell you, this is a good man, and he is a very capable man, and I think South Korea is very lucky to have him. Do you want to interpret that for him so he can hear it? Because, you know, he's not hearing what we're doing here.
지금 저기 문
Go ahead.
대통령께서
Wait, we'll just let that be
대통령께서
interpreted.
그 북한과 미국 간의 그런
probably does.
중재자
Probably knows
역할에
better
대해서
than we do.
신뢰를 갖고 계시냐라는 그런 질문했습니다. 나는 그 문 대통령의 능력을 굉장히 크게 신뢰하고 있다라고 말씀하셨고요. 지금 그 문 대통령이 아니면은 이 문제가 여기까지 오지 않았을 것이다. 이 문제에 대해서 특히 문 대통령께서 많은 기여를 했다. 한국에는 예전에도 많은 대통령이 있었습니다. 그렇지만은 지금까지 여기까지 올 수 있었던 것은 문 대통령
cases are pending, but do know that in addition to the capital murder case and in addition to the attempted capital murder case, there were two other offenses in the grand jury returned indictment for aggravated assault on a deadly weapon on a public servant, and that did relate to the chase itself.
What do we know about the weapon that he used at this point? Was he legally authorized to have it when he did it? You know?
We're not going to talk about any details as it relates to the fact. You all know my position as it relates to any case that we try here in Dallas County. I always want to be able to keep the case in Dallas County. I don't want to ever reveal any particular facts because we don't want jurors to be tainted in any kind of way in terms of any particular facts in the case. Any other questions? Thank you all so very much for coming. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Guys, I know we're just jumping in there last minute, but that was a Dallas grand jury indictment of a 30-year-old Armando Juarez on 5 counts, including capital murder and attempt of capital murder. This all had to do with a case back in April, if you remember that Home Depot shooting back in Dallas on April 24th, where the officer was shot. He was fatally shot by this person, and now the grand jury is just announcing this indictment. So that was Faith Johnson of the Dallas County. She is the district attorney, rather, and you can see there's her seal. Unfortunately, we just kind of caught the tail end of that, but that was the official indictment. Again, the person is 30 years old, and the officer who was shot was Rogelio Santander, and he was confronting a shoplifter inside that Home Depot when he was fatally shot back in late April. So that's just coming now, and those are the details. If anything else comes of this case or for us live, we'll bring that to you. For now, let's go back into the White House for these remarks from President Trump and this conversation between President Trump and the president of South Korea just moments ago. And these are their words. This is just a few moments ago inside the White House.
For physical reasons, over a very short period of time. Essentially, that would be all in one.
그런데 한꺼번에 이루어진다라는 것은 어떤 물리적인 여건으로 봤을 때 불가능할 수 있으니까 물리적인 그러한 이유 때문에 아주 짧은 시간 내에 이 일이 이루어졌으면 바랍니다. 하겠습니다.
President Trump, I'm a reporter from South Korea. If the North Korea and Kim Jong-un reply the CVID, will you really guarantee the safety of the regime of North Korea?
I will guarantee his safety, yes. We will guarantee his safety. And we've talked about that from the beginning. He will be safe. He will be happy. His country will be rich. His country will be hardworking and very prosperous. They're very great people. They're hardworking, great people. Look at what happened with South Korea. Don't forget, we helped South Korea. We have spent trillions of dollars, not billions, trillions of dollars over many, many years. We helped South Korea. And South Korea is one of the most incredible countries in terms of what they do. You know that. That's where you are. That's where you're from. Same people. Same people. So, yeah, I think that he will be extremely happy if something works out. And if it doesn't work out, honestly, he can't be happy. But he has a chance to do something that maybe has never been done before. And I think it would be, if you look 25 years into the future, 50 years into the future, he will be able to look back and be very proud of what he did for North Korea and actually for the world. But he will be very proud of what he did for North Korea. Okay?
President, what do you want to ask President Moon about his own summit?
대통령이 그 CVID를 요청을 한다라고 하면은 체제 정권을 보장해 주시겠습니까? 라는 질문이 있습니다. 트럼프 대통령의 답변은 보장하겠습니다. 또는 처음부터 보장하겠다고 얘기를 해온 것입니다. 그리고 또 그 김정은은 안전할 것이고 또 굉장히 그 아주 기쁠 것입니다. 또 북한은 굉장히 번영될 것이고 북한 국민은 아주 열심히 일하는 국민입니다. 그래서 아주 북한 국민들을 위해서 또 한국을 위해서도 상당히 좋은 일이 될 것입니다. 미국은 아시다시피 지금까지 한국에 9조 달러의 지원을 해왔습니다. 그리고 지금 한국을 보시면 얼마나 세계에서 훌륭한 국가인지 다 아실 것입니다. 북한도 같은 민족을 가진 사람들입니다. 그렇기 때문에 이번에 이 협상이 잘 이루어진다면 김정은 굉장히 기쁘게 할 것이고 만약에 이루어지지 않는다면 내가 솔직히 말해서 김정은은 그렇게 기쁘지 않을 것이라고 생각이 듭니다. 하지만 지금 김정은은 역사상 없는 가장 큰 기회를 갖고 있습니다. 그럼 뭔가를 해놓을 수 있는 그런 기회를 가지고 있습니다. 그래서 25년 지난 다음에 50년이 지난 다음에 아주 상당히 자랑스러운 그런 일을 할 수가 있습니다. 이것은 북한 국민들뿐만 아니라 전 세계를 위해서 한반도를 위해서 굉장히 좋은 일을 할 수 있는 그러한 기회가 지금 그 김정은 위원장의 손 안에 있습니다.
And just to finish that, because it's a very important question, South Korea, China, and Japan, and I've spoken to all three, one I happen to have right here, they will be willing to help and I believe invest very, very large sums of money into helping to make North Korea great.
네, 그리고 한 가지 중요한 말씀을 더 덧붙이도록 하겠습니다. 한국과 중국, 일본, 그리고 한국 대통령이 내 옆에 계십니다. 이 3국과 다 내가 대화를 했습니다. 이 3국 모두 북한을 도와서 북한을 아주 위대한 국가로 만들기 위한 아주 많은 지원을 지금 약속하고 있습니다.
What do you want to hear from President Moon about his own summit with Kim Jong-un? What can he tell you as you're preparing for the meeting?
Well, that's what we're here for. He's going to tell me. He's got his own meetings that he's had. We're going to discuss that. He may have a meeting coming up. He may not. The word is that he may not. It may be directly with us. It may go directly to us in Singapore, or it may be at a later date. But that's one of the reasons that he's here to talk about that. Nothing. No. We speak a lot on the phone. This should not be that long a meeting, actually. He may or may not. He may or may not. Right now, he doesn't know whether or not he has a meeting. But he may or may not have a meeting with Kim Jong-un.
질문은 지금 남북 정상회담 때 어떠한 경험을 듣겠느냐, 말씀을 듣겠느냐라고 질문하셨고, 지금 문 대통령께서 오신 게 바로 그러한 문 대통령의 의견을 얘기하기 위해서 왔던 것입니다. 문 대통령께서 내가 싱가포르에 북미 회담 전에 북한을 만날 수 있고 또 나중에 만날 수 있겠습니다만은 이런 여러 가지 다양한 얘기를 지금 드릴 것입니다. 그리고 우리는 자주 통화를 하기 때문에 뭐 그동안에 어떤 얘기를 안 한 것이 많지는 않습니다.
Okay.
Mr. President, are you pleased with how the trade process has gone?
No, not really. I think that they're a start, but we need something. Look, China has been, I really call it a dereliction of duties. That if you look at it, it's called, in the military, they'd say it's a dereliction of duty. What happened to our country, that our representatives allowed other countries, and I'm not just talking about China, China's the big one, to take advantage of us on trade the way we've been taken advantage of. So China, as an example, has made a fortune. I mean, a transfer of wealth like nobody's ever seen in history. They're the big one. They're almost all bad, but China's the big one. So no, I'm not satisfied, but we'll see what happens. We have a long way to go. But I wanted to go fairly quickly. You know, you're talking about numbers like that. You're talking about billions of dollars a week, okay? So when they say, oh, let's meet in a couple of weeks, oh, that's $2 billion, right? I view it that way. You know, we're talking about billions of dollars a week that we suffer. We lose. And so we're looking to go quickly. I will say I'm a little disappointed because when Kim Jong-un had the meeting with President Xi in China, the second meeting, the first meeting we knew about, the second meeting, I think there was a little change in attitude from Kim Jong-un. So I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like it from the standpoint of China. Now, I hope that's not true because I have a great relationship with President Xi. He's a friend of mine. He likes me. I like him. That was two of the great days of my life being in China. I don't think anybody's ever been treated better in China ever in their history, and I just think it was, many of you were there. It was an incredible thing to witness and see, and we built a very good relationship. We speak a lot. But there was a difference when Kim Jong-un left China the second time. And I think they were dedicating an aircraft carrier that the United States paid for, okay? Because we paid for a lot that was built in China. No, but I think that President Xi is a world-class poker player. And I'd probably maybe doing the same thing that he would do. But I will say this, there was a somewhat different attitude after that meeting, and I'm a little surprised. Now, maybe nothing happened. I'm not blaming anybody, but I'm just saying maybe nothing happened and maybe it did. But there was a different attitude by the North Korean folks when after that meeting. So I don't think it was a great meeting. Nobody knew about the meeting, and all of a sudden it was reported that he was in China a second time. The first time everybody knew about. The second time it was like a surprise. And I think things changed after that meeting. So I can't say that I'm happy about it. Okay?
Mr. President, what's
let him go.
그 두 번째 만난 다음에, 휴대석과 만난 다음에, 내가 보기에는 김정은의 태도가 좀 변했다라고 생각을 합니다. 그거에 대해서 나는 별로 좋은 느낌이 아닙니다. 그렇지 않기를 바랍니다. 왜냐하면 나는 그 휴대석과 굉장히 좋은 관계를 유지하기 때문입니다. 그리고 여러분들도 아시다시피 내가 중국을 갔을 때 아주 중국에서 큰 환대를 받았습니다. 하지만 김정은 위원장이 중국을 두 번째 방문하고 떠난 다음에 태도 변화가 있었던 것은 사실입니다. 이것이 과연 또 질문이 그렇다면은 그 기자의 질문이 그렇다면 중국이 어떤 북한에게 미국과의 관계에 대해서 약간 부정적으로 얘기를 했다고 보느냐라는 질문이 나왔고 트럼프 대통령 거기에 대해서 그건 내가 알 수가 없습니다. 휴대석은 세계 최고의 그 도박자, 포커 플레이어라고 볼 수가 있습니다. 뭐 나도 마찬가지라고 봅니다. 어쨌든 만난 다음에 태도가 변한 것은 사실입니다. 어쩌면 거기서 아무 일이 일어나지 않았을 수도 있고 일어났을 수도 있습니다만은 거기에 대해서 중요한 것은 그 휴대석과 김정은 위원장과의 만남에 대해서 아무도 몰랐다는 사실입니다. 그리고 그 이후에 다들 놀랐죠. 그리고 어느 정도 태도 변화가 있었다라는 그 부분만은 사실인 것은 틀림없습니다.
Now, President Moon may have a different opinion. I'd like to have your opinion on that. What you thought of the second meeting with President Xi. What is your feeling? You may have an opinion.
그래서는 그 두 번째 휴대석과의 김정은과의 만남에 대해서 내가 생각하는 것과 다른 생각을 가질 수도 있겠습니다. 그래서 문 대통령께서 그 의견에 대해서 다른 의견이 있으면 지금 말씀하셔도 될 것 같습니다.
And I don't want to get him in trouble. He lives right next to China. You know, he's not too far away.
그런데 아마 문 대통령께서는 좀 조심하셔야 될 부분도 있겠습니다. 왜냐하면 바로 옆에 북한과 바로 옆에 사시니까요. 그래서 공룡이 딱 마음은 없습니다만.
네, 우선 이 북미 정상회담이 성공할 수 있을 것인가, 그리고 북한의 완전한 비핵화라는 것이 과연 실현될 것인가, 여기에 대해서 회의적인 시각이 미국 내에 많이 있다는 사실을 잘 알고 있습니다.
Well, first of all, I'm very much aware that there are many skeptical views within the United States about whether the upcoming U.S. North Korea summit will truly be successful and whether the complete denuclearization of North Korea will be realized.
그러나 과거에 실패해 왔었다고 이번에도 실패할 것이라고 미리 비관한다면 역사의 발전이라는 것은 있을 수 없을 것입니다.
But I don't think there will be positive developments in history if we just assume that because it all failed in the past, it will fail again.
지금까지 북미 간에 여러 번 합의가 있었지만 정상들 간의 합의가 도모되는 것은 이번이 사상 최초입니다.
There have been many agreements between the United States and North Korea previously, but this will be the first time that there will be an agreement between the leaders.
더구나 그 정상회담을 이끄는 분이 바로 트럼프 대통령이십니다.
And moreover, the person who is in charge is President Trump.
트럼프 대통령은 지금의 이 극적인 변화, 긍정적인 상황 변화를 이끌어내셨습니다.
And President Trump has been able to achieve this dramatic and positive change that you see right now.
저는 트럼프 대통령께서 북미 정상회담도 반드시 성공시켜서 65년 동안 끝내지 못했던 한국 전쟁을 종식시키고 북한의 완전한 비핵화를 이룬과 동시에 한반도의 항구적인 평화 체제를 구축하고 또 북미 간에도 수교를 하는 등 정상적인 관계를 수립해 내실 것이라고 확신합니다. 그것은 세계사에 있어서 엄청난 대전환이 될 것입니다. 그 엄청난 대전환의 위협을 트럼프 대통령이 반드시 이뤄낼 것이라는 믿음을 가지고 있고 저도 거기에 최선을 다해서 협조할 것입니다.
And I have every confidence that President Trump will be able to achieve a historic feat of making the upcoming U.S.-North Korea summit successful and end the Korean War that had been lasting for the past 65 years, and also along the way achieve complete denuclearization of North Korea, establish a permanent peace regime on the Korean Peninsula, and also normalize relations between the United States and North Korea. I have every confidence that he will be able to make a historic turnaround in this sense, and I will spare no effort to provide all necessary support.
그리고 그것은 북한에게도 체제의 안전을 보장함과 동시에 북한에게 평화와 번영을 이렇게 만들 수 있게 해주는 아주 좋은 일이 될 것입니다.
And I believe that all of this will lead to a great thing, that it will also guarantee the security of the North Korean regime and also promise a peace and prosperity for North Korea as well.
Mr. President, do you believe that President Xi is committed to peace and committed to North Korea's denuclearization?
I would like to think so. I hope so. I mean, we're dealing mostly on trade, but you see, when I'm dealing on trade, I have many other things in mind also. Every time I talk to China about trade, I'm thinking about the border, because that border is a very important element in what we're doing. It has been cut off largely, but it's been opened up a little bit lately. I don't like that. I don't like that. So we have a very powerful hand on trade, and when I'm thinking about trade, I read you folks and you say, well, why doesn't he do it? There's a much bigger picture that I have in mind. Trade has always been a very important element in my life, talking about other countries ripping off the United States. I've been watching them do it for 35 years. I've been watching them do that for so many years, and nothing's changed other than over the last 15, 20 years, it's gotten worse. And it's not just China. But when I think of trade with China, I'm also thinking about what they're doing to help us with peace with North Korea. That's a very important element. So we'll see how it all works out. But in the end, it'll work out. Can't tell you exactly how or why, but it always does. It's going to work out. Okay? Thank you all. John, you have one more? Go ahead.
One more, sir. I'm just wondering, what is your vision for the long game with North Korea? Is it two Koreas? peacefully coexisting, or would you like to see reunification at some point?
Well, I think what's going to happen is you'll start off certainly with 2 Koreas, and then it's going to be largely up to them as to whether or not they get together. You know, that border was artificially imposed many, many years ago, and imposed to a certain extent and to a very large extent by us. It's an artificial border, but it's a border that nevertheless it took seed, and that's what you have. I would say that we are looking certainly right now at 2 Koreas, 2 very successful Koreas. You're going to have a very, very successful North Korea, and you're going to have a very successful, and you already do, South Korea. I mean, South Korea was in condition that was as bad as North Korea many years ago when they started this great experiment that worked out so well for them. Now you look at Samsung and LG and the ships that they're building and what they're doing, it's incredible. When I was over there, I flew over plants that are incredible. What they've done is incredible. So I see 2 Koreas, and then ultimately maybe someday in the future, it wouldn't be now, but someday in the future maybe they'll get together and you'll go back to 1 Korea. And that would be okay with me too, as long as they both wanted that. Okay? Thank you all very much. Thank you.
So President Trump revealing that that North Korean summit could be delayed, but not giving out too much more information about that or about his talks with North Korea specifically. I want to go back, though, to the European Union Parliament, guys. Looks like Zuckerberg is up there. He is speaking. Finally, we hadn't actually heard him utter many words earlier, but he's getting questions from the EU Parliament this time, discussing Facebook and data privacy with European leaders this time. So let's go over there. This is live from Europe, coming right into us.
One of the things that I'm proud of is that our AI systems have now can flag 99% of the ISIS and Al-Qaeda related content that we end up taking down before any person in our community flags that for us. Another example is around bullying. We had this really unfortunate set of incidents when we first launched Facebook Live, where we saw that people were harming themselves or committing suicide on live. And we realized that we needed to do a much better job of addressing that quickly. So we built AI tools and tools to determine if someone was thinking about harm or suicide, hired 3,000 people to make it so that the response time that we could get to those live videos is now less than 10 minutes. And that has been one area where we've been able to significantly improve. But we're basically going through each of these areas, starting from the areas that are the most sensitive and have the highest risk of harm: terror, bullying, self-harm, election integrity, which is obviously extremely important, are prioritizing them first. But our goal over the coming years is going to get to developing the AI systems and hiring the staff necessary to be able to proactively review more of the content as it's coming into the system. We'll never be perfect on this. You know, our adversaries, especially on the election side, people who are trying to interfere, will have access to some of the same AI tools that we will. So it's an arms race, and we'll need to constantly be working to stay ahead. But our vision for how we should manage the system is going to move from one of reactive management as people in our community flag things to one where we're more proactively having systems look at the content, flag things for tens of thousands of people to review. And we're already making significant progress in doing that. Now, a number of you mentioned specifically issues around fake news. So I want to talk a little bit about our roadmap for addressing this, because the bottom line here is that nobody on Facebook or off Facebook wants fake news, right? No one will sit here and say that they want the information that they see to be false. So, you know, we've broken down the problem, and we think that there are 3 main sources of content that are problematic here. The first is just spam, which I touched on a little bit in my opening statement. And it's not politically motivated or ideologically motivated, it's economically motivated. It's people who are just trying to make money by coming up with the most sensationalist content they can and putting it out there. So the way you fight this is the same roadmap that companies have used to fight email spam. You take away these spammers' profit motive, and then they go do something else. And we've done a number of things like preventing them from using Facebook ads, decreasing the distribution to do this. The second category is fighting fake accounts. Because what we found is that when people are using fake accounts on our system, there's less accountability. and they're more likely to spread bad information, misinformation, interact in ways that are interfering in elections and things like that. So we develop systems both to identify fake accounts as they're being registered, and we just released a transparency report where we said that we took down, I think it was in the first quarter of this year, about 580 million fake accounts, the vast majority within minutes of being registered, as our systems are able to identify that well. We also have a significant operation which is working on identifying fake accounts that get through that initial filter, so we can identify them all once they're in the Facebook community. Our best estimate today, I think, is that it's a single-digit % of the accounts, but we're constantly working on improving our tools to be able to identify that, and that's extremely important as well. So you have spammers, you have fake accounts. The last category is people who are well-meaning, but just happen to share something that is provably false. And there, we don't want to be in a position as Facebook of saying what is true or false. We think that that's not the right position for us to be. So we want to work with third-party fact checkers, and we're public with who all the fact checkers are, to one of the questions that there was earlier. And if a number of third-party fact checkers all identify that a piece of news is provably false, then we'll append something to the story to make sure that we show more related content, so that people can have a more rounded view or understand that fact checkers have marked that story is true, and we'll try to show it less. Now we're trying to roll that out around the world. That requires having specific fact-checking partners in every country and in every language. So we're constantly rolling out more each month, and we have a lot more to do here, and we know that there's a lot more to do there. All right, then there were a number of questions around elections. So I know that there are a lot of important elections coming up in Europe. I think in 2019 and 2018, there were elections in Slovenia and Sweden, Latvia, Estonia, Belgium, Poland, and of course the European Parliament. And this is one of our top priorities as a company, is just making sure that we prevent anyone from trying to interfere in elections like the Russians were able to in the US presidential election in 2016. And I outlined some of the roadmap for that earlier. The game plan is a combination of building more AI tools to identify fake accounts that are trying to interfere and take them down, like we did in the French presidential election, where we identified and took down more than 30,000 accounts. A playbook of closer operation and cooperation with federal election commissions, like we executed in the German elections in 2017, and increased transparency, which we think is going to be very important. If you have the ads that every political actor or advertiser is trying to run to every audience be public, then there's just more accountability. And if someone is trying to do that as a fake account, it becomes more apparent. If someone as a legitimate political actor is just sending different messages to different groups, that will be transparent. So we think that greater accountability is important. And that set of transparency tools that we're building, we're going to be rolling out around the world globally this summer. So we're optimistic about that. We think that there's probably more to do to add on to those after the first version, but we think that first version is going to take us quite far as well. I think, okay, so then there were a number of questions about regulation. Some of the questions asked how I view regulation. I don't think the question here is whether or not there should be regulation. I think the question is, what is the right regulation? I think the internet is becoming increasingly important in people's lives. Some sort of regulation is important and inevitable, and the important thing is to get this right, and to make sure that we have regulatory frameworks that help protect people, that are flexible so that they allow for innovation, that don't inadvertently prevent new technologies like AI from being able to develop, and of course to make sure that that new startups, right? So the next student sitting in a college dorm room like I was 14 years ago doesn't have an undue burden on being able to build the next great products. So we think that that's really important, and that's an ongoing conversation that we look forward to participating in. There were a couple of questions around competition and how we view our role and our position as a platform here. And to that, I'd say a few things. One is, first is that we exist in a very competitive space where people use a lot of different tools for communication. Where the average person uses about 8 different tools for communication, ranging from all sorts of private messaging up to more broadcast mediums, to things where they're communicating with groups of people and all of their friends at once. So from where I sit, it feels like there are new competitors coming up every day. There are competitors that reach tens and hundreds of millions of people, and we're constantly needing to evolve our service in order to stay relevant and serve people well. So that feels like it's a competitive environment where there are many choices that people have. On the business side, the business model is advertising. Facebook today is about 6% of the global advertising market. So clearly advertisers also have a lot of choice in terms of where they choose to advertise. And that's an important lens to look at it from as well, although I think that you want to look at it both from the consumer choice perspective and the business choice. One thing that I want to add that I think often gets overlooked when you talk about competition is, around the world there are 70 million small businesses that use Facebook's tools to grow and reach customers. And in Europe alone, there are about 18 million small businesses that use Facebook tools. And as I said in my opening statement, about half of them have told us that they are hiring more people because of their use of our tools to be able to grow. So I think it's important not to lose track of, when you're thinking about competition, that there's the element in the internet space and in the advertising space, but there's also the extremely pro-competitive effect of enabling all these small businesses to now have access to the same kinds of marketing and advertising tools and be able to reach customers in sophisticated technological ways that previously only large businesses had the means to do. And that's something that we're very proud of, that we can provide, is something that levels the playing field. And I think when you're thinking about the overall ecosystem and competition there, I think that that's a very important part to take into account. There were a number of questions about taxes, so I want to touch on that briefly as well. Facebook has always paid taxes in all of the countries where we have operations set up. We pay all taxes required by law, and we invest heavily in Europe. Right? We're going to have more than 10,000 employees across Europe and 12 cities by the end of this year. We have 2 data centers, or we have data centers already in Sweden and Ireland, and we're building another one in Denmark that's going to be online in 2020. So we've always paid the taxes that the law requires, and we're making significant investments in terms of helping to build the economies in the countries here, and to contribute to the innovation and job growth here as well. All right, let me see what else is there. Okay, there were a few questions about GDPR. The principles here are around control, transparency, and accountability. The idea, a number of you asked when we expect to be fully compliant with GDPR regulations. We do expect to be fully compliant on May 25th, so in 3 days from now. We've had a large team working on this inside Facebook to make sure that we're compliant. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure in rolling this out is, one of the things that the law requires here in Europe is that someone has to go through these extensive flows before they can use the service, starting on May 25th. And one of the pieces of feedback that we got from people in the community was that they didn't want to get roadblocked before being able to go see their friends' content, right? If you're coming to Facebook because you want to share something, the last thing that we want is for someone to go through the flows quicker than they need to, and just click OK or no on a bunch of stuff because they just want to blow through that in order to get to what they were trying to do. So we've actually been rolling out the GDPR settings and flows for a while now, and a large percent of Europeans have already gone through them, and we've basically put the flows in front of people and given them the opportunity to dismiss them starting on May 25th. we will start requiring people to go through the flows before they can resume using our services. So a large percent of people, dozens of percents, have gone through the flows already, and we've gotten good feedback on that and how we've implemented that so far. Let me see if there's anything else that is important to touch on. There were a couple of questions about political bias that I want to touch on, because I think that this is a very important topic. As a couple of you mentioned, we are committed to being a platform for all ideas. That means that we want to make it so that people can come to our service and share any idea across the political spectrum. It's very important to me that we're a service that allows for a wide variety of political discourse. We view that as a big part of our responsibility, and I can commit to you here today that we have never and will not make decisions about what content is allowed or how we do ranking on the basis of a political orientation. So that's an important philosophical point for me that I'm proud to be able to commit to. There was a specific point around distribution and reduction of seeing people's content, and on that, what I'd just say is we've made a number of changes this year to make sure that we're showing people's friends and family and community content more than public content in general. So a lot of the feedback that we've heard from people is that they come to Facebook because they want to stay connected to people. We've also done a lot of well-being research. This wasn't a topic that came up today, but we're very focused on making sure that people's use of technology is good for people's well-being and is not taking away from it in some way. And all the research that we have shows that when you're using the internet to stay connected to people that you care about, that's good for your well-being. It's correlated with measures like increased measures of health and happiness and feeling more connected and less alone over time. But when you're just using Facebook or the internet overall to read news or passively consume videos, that isn't correlated with those same benefits to well-being. So because of that and because of feedback that we've received, we've made a number of shifts to the services to promote connecting with people's friends and family and communities more than public content. So that has led to reductions in distribution for public content, video, news, across the board, and is not targeting any specific political ideology. Is there anything else here?
Shadow profiles. Shadow profiles.
Sure. So to your question, for the content that websites and apps send us, we think it's very important that people have the ability to clear this. So we just launched or just announced that we're building and will soon launch this clear history feature that allows you to clear all basic browsing history data. To your point about earlier around how do we separate out the security data? It's very important that we don't have people who aren't Facebook users coming to our service and trying to scrape the public data that's available. So one of the ways that we do that is, people use our service and even if they're not signed in, we need to understand how they're using the service to prevent bad activity. And that's, a big theme of today has been around making sure that we can do a better job of governing the system, keeping bad content out. One of the ways that we do that is by understanding how people are using the system.
But if you're not a Facebook user, how do you stop that data being transferred?
On a security side, we think it's important to keep it to protect people in our community. Were there any other themes that we want to get through? I mean, right, that's good. So there were a number of questions around whether Cambridge Analytica was the tip of the iceberg, or whether we expect there to be more apps that have misused data. On this, the good news with Cambridge Analytica is that the changes that we made back in 2014 would prevent a new app like Cambridge Analytica wasn't an app. It was an app developer who used the platform and then sold the data to Cambridge Analytica, which is a is a whole other thing. But it wouldn't be possible for an app developer to get access to that level of data since after our 2014 platform changes went into effect. But because there were a lot of different apps that were using the system before 2014 and before the changes went into effect in 2015, we think it's important now to go back and investigate every single app that had access to a large amount of people's personal data before we locked down the platform. So that's what we're in the process of doing. We've already investigated thousands of apps, and as I said earlier, we've taken down more than 200. There are many thousands more that we need to investigate. This is going to take many months. I do anticipate that there are going to be other apps that we find that we're going to want to take down, and this is why we're going now and doing this full investigation. This is part of our shift towards not just trying to manage the system reactively of having, we've always had the ability for people in our community to flag apps that they thought were bad actors to us, and then we would look at them. We've had the ability to, and we've done audits of apps in the past. We've had a content review and app review team. But now what we're doing is taking a much more proactive approach. So rather than waiting for people in the community to flag for us that there may be issues, we are going through and investigating ourselves upfront all the different apps that had access to a large amount of information. We are upfront reviewing every app that asks for access to additional people's information. And anywhere where we see any concerns, we're going to bring in third-party auditors to conduct a full audit to determine if there was any misuse of people's personal information. And if there was, we will ban those apps and tell everyone who is affected. I want to be sensitive to time because we are 15 minutes over the scheduled meeting. I think that I realized that there were a lot of specific questions that I didn't get to specifically answer, but going around and hearing the themes of what people are concerned about and had questions about, I think I was able to address the high-level areas in each, and I'll make sure that we follow up with each of you afterwards to make sure that your specific questions get addressed, and we're going to have someone come to do a full hearing soon to answer more of the technical questions as well. So thank you again for inviting me.
I think there was one question raised by Guy Verhofstadt, and that's linked to my question, and that's the separation of different services. And I think it's a very important question in this round, the market power of Facebook, and the question if you cross-use, for example, data between Facebook and WhatsApp. So it would be good if you say at least one word to that.
Will you allow users to escape targeted advertising? I mean, I asked you 6 yes and no questions. I got not a single answer. And of course, well, you asked for this format, well, for a reason.
Okay. I'll make sure we follow up and get you answers to those.
Okay, I think I want to ask you if it's possible to have the right answer for any question from you in the next days.
Oh, well, we have all well prepared our interventions, so we have them on paper. We could, Mr. President, you collect them, you give them to the team of Mr. Zuckerberg, or Mr. Zuckerberg himself, and we receive written answers on it. Because, let's be honest, I have not so much, I don't think that the right way is to say, and now we're going to put it in Libe and so on. No, there are a number of questions that have been put by other colleagues that I want an answer to. That said, I'm anxious of this new brave new world that Mr. Zuckerberg has presented us. A brave new world where tens and tens of thousands of private people are scrutinizing us and are saying what is fake news, what is not fake news, what is hate speech, what is not hate speech.
Mr.
Don't you think that it is a public
task? The
task?
continuation of this discussion in this format as well as in the Liebe format. This is very obvious.
No, I think, first of all, is it possible to have answer question by question, to have a right answer by Mr. Zuckerberg in the next days for every question?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Now, competition, for example, a European antitrust thing, that's important. Do we need? I think we're going to push our antitrust agency to go into this if there is not a good answer to it.
I think the problem is the timing. For me, it's possible to say, but there is a flight. But I think if Mr. Yes, yes,
There
okay.
are strikes, that's the only thing.
Sorry, I think this is the format. If do you agree, Mr. Zuckerberg, for right answer in the next days for a question by question, if possible, for the right answer? Yes, you have the question, okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
So a pretty interesting session there with EU Parliament, guys. Apparently, Mark Zuckerberg pushed to keep this session private. He did not really want it out in the public sphere, but other members and leaders in Parliament said they wanted this to be public use and public video. So that's why we're able to bring that to your stream today. Pretty interesting stuff. A lot of talk, of course, about Cambridge Analytica and data privacy, as was the case when Zuckerberg testified before Congress just a few weeks ago. So lots of interesting stuff coming out of this. Sam is coming up next, guys, for more coverage here on Fox 5 Live. We're going to keep it going with whatever we have rolling in as far as live video. Right now, just a re-rack of President Trump with the president of South Korea. Unfortunately, nothing new really coming in, but the big detail there that we got from that is that he did mention that his meeting with North Korea is possibly delayed. Not quite sure when that's going to happen. That official or original June date, June 12th or so, might not be the case. Trump was somewhat vague on what was going to happen by way of that meeting. So that's really the biggest piece of information to come out of this meeting. We'll keep a lookout for anything else that's coming up, guys, and we'll be right back.
As the leader said, Senator Klobuchar and I have been working on looking at the Congressional Accountability Act from 1995 and talked to her colleagues on the Democratic side about that today at noon. I talked to my colleagues about it today at noon. We need to compare notes a little bit, but in looking at what needs to be changed in the law, you know, the current law, the victim in a harassment situation has to have 30 days of counseling. Then there was another 30-day period where you had to have mandatory arbitration, and then a 30-day cooling off period before the victim could actually go to court and seek grievance that way. We will be eliminating those things, and members for harassment will have personal liability, and I think we'll have legislation prepared by the end of the day today, and she and I will jointly put out some sort of outline on what we've talked to our members about today sometime later this afternoon.
Last week, the Senate Intelligence Committee leaders said they reaffirmed what the intelligence community had said in 2017 about its assessment of Russia meddling, which of course said that Putin favored Donald Trump in the elections. Do you have any reason to dispute the January 2017 intelligence community assessment?
I don't have any observation to make about it. We've got a couple of intelligence committee members here. I don't know whether they want to opine on that subject or not. Nope. Okay.
Leader McConnell, there's been some suggestion by some members of your conference to keep the Senate around in August. We were here for a little bit of time last year, not as long as you had suggested. Is that going to happen? Is it going to be on appropriations, or is this going to be on nominations? If it happens?
Well, as I've indicated, I'll have more to say about the August break in the near future.
Leader McDonald.
Senator McConnell.
Yeah.
President Trump is trying to get information from the Department of Justice on classified sources regarding the Russia investigation. What are your thoughts on that? Is that appropriate for the president to do?
Yeah, I don't have any observation about that.
Senator, is there a role for the Senate to play specifically in this dispute over ZTE? Some of your members have expressed concern that the Trump administration is essentially backing down in these negotiations, and they don't think that's appropriate.
Anybody have any thoughts about that?
I'd be happy to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Roy. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I think that our challenges with China both are from a national security standpoint and from an economic standpoint. And ZTE happens to be a national security issue, like Huawei, other state-owned telecommunications companies, because in every boardroom of every state-owned company is the Communist Party of China, and they don't see any distinction between public and private. It's all in the interest of the country economically and from a national security standpoint. So I think that's why it's really important for us to understand that both of those need to be addressed. In the case of ZTE, I believe it's not so much a trade or economic issue as it is a national security issue. And I'm sure we'll continue to have conversations about that.
Do you think that requires some kind of legislative action?
Well, we've already taken some action, and I think the Federal Communications Commission has also taken action to deny the use of federal subsidies for telecommunications infrastructure in parts of the country. So this is an important issue, and we need to deal with it, but to me, it's primarily a national security issue.
Senator McConnell. Chief of Staff Kelly is going to be breaking members' leadership on some of the findings in the DOJ look into whether or not there was some place in the campaign. Is this something, do you have a date on, do you know, and do you know also, should Democrats be in that meeting?
What's the question again?
Chief of Staff Kelly is likely to be congressional leaders on the background on this probe into whether or not he was infiltrating. Should Democrats be at the table with the leaders? And do you know, is there a date set?
Yeah, I don't have any advice to give him on that.
Leader McDonald.
What's the outlook for the sexual harassment legislation?
Well, as Senator Blunt said, I think he and Senator Klobuchar are close to agreement. He briefed us. She briefed the Democrats. They'll be out shortly. You can ask them. I think it's safe to say that we're very close and hope to move forward quickly.
Hey there, everybody. It's Sam here in the newsroom. We just caught the end there of a little Senate stakeout at the Capitol. Bunch of GOP. Well, there was Mitch McDonald there at the end answering some questions from the press about what they're doing moving forward with certain legislation. So we're also awaiting a press conference with lawyer Gloria Allred. There's been new allegations against staff at University of Southern California. Let me see if I can pull up some information. So this is from two women that have asked to. Sorry, they haven't asked. They've come forward with information that they were sexually assaulted by a doctor on campus. This is against. Oh, this is a. Let's see if I can pull up my info. It's a doctor at USC. Sorry, for former USC students who are now suing the school against an ex-campus gynecologist who is accused now of molesting the students over several decades as a serial sexual predator. And this is against Dr. George Tyndall, who routinely made crude comments, took inappropriate photographs, and forced the plaintiffs, these women, to strip naked and grope them, all under the guise of medical treatment. This sounds very similar to some of the things that we heard from the Larry Nassar trial and hearings that we were just going through recently. So we will see what the latest that they have to say about that is in just a moment. But we'll see what's going on else in the world. What do we have here? Stand by.
if they just take
Hey all, it's Sam back in the newsroom again. Just wanted to set up some things before we took off for today. Earlier, I don't think Molly played this out for you, but there was a meeting earlier today. Senate Democrat leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, they both made an announcement that they're going to try and change some of the tax plan that they're proposing from President Trump's plan to help give teachers a raise across the country. So I'm going to play some of that for you.
Who I've known for a shorter amount of time, but with as much affection and respect. And, of course, our great leader, Nancy Pelosi, who I have known since 1986. Okay. And Patty Murray, who I have known since 1992. Okay. Now, thank you for coming and hearing my life's history, and we're about to. Anyway, we're here today because teachers are marching on state capitals across the country, demanding higher pay, better working conditions, and more resources. They're not just fighting for themselves, they're fighting for the future of America. They're marching in blue states. They're marching in red states. Teachers of America, we Democrats hear you loud and clear. We hear the teachers who are demanding more pay, who work so hard every day to educate our students, but must also punch in at a second job to make ends meet. We hear teachers who are so committed to their students, but who work in schools that are so underfunded that they pay hundreds of dollars out of their own pockets for school supplies. Look, for the better part of the 20th century, being a teacher meant being part of the robust American middle class. You worked hard, you never became rich, but you received decent pay and benefits, enough to afford a home, a car, a vacation, and raise a family. But unfortunately, teachers' pay for the last 20 years has been falling behind. That matters to all of us, not just to teachers. We need great teachers in every classroom, so that our children have every opportunity to succeed. In my view, teaching should be an exalted profession in the 21st century, the way doctor or lawyer has been an exalted profession in the 20th century. Teaching is every bit as important to the future of this country. And teachers' pay should more closely reflect their value to society. Every one of us knows teachers who've changed our lives. I can remember Mrs. Roberts in Cunningham Junior High School, or Miss Riley in Madison High School. They changed my life. I wouldn't be here without them. It's an important, important profession, and these days in America, we don't treat it that way, at least financially. So we Democrats have a plan to help our teachers and students. Our plan will do a few things, which my colleagues will detail shortly, but it would be a major boost to teacher pay, investments in school infrastructure, and increasing academic opportunities, because our investment in teachers' work should match the work they are doing for our kids. I want to tell you about the first plank of our plan to provide a better deal for teachers and their students. Under our proposal, we would dedicate $50 billion to states and school districts to increase teacher compensation and recruit and retain a strong, diverse workforce over the next 10 years. It's hard enough to recruit young people to join the teaching profession, even harder to retain those who do. Teachers' pay should match the work they are doing for their kids, and that means significant investments. This is not just a expenditure, it's an investment if there ever was one. We achieve this by repealing the Trump tax cut for the wealthiest of Americans. How many Americans think multimillionaires should get a tax break versus teachers, their kids' teachers, being paid a decent salary? We know whose side the American people are on. Put simply, instead of giving a tax cut to the richest of Americans, we should give a pay raise to teachers in this country who our students depend on to succeed. Period. No ands, no ifs, no buts. Instead of allowing millionaires, billionaires, and massive corporations to keep their tax breaks and special interest loopholes, we Democrats believe we should invest in teachers and students. We already know the Republican tax bill was a scam.
Hey everybody, we've been waiting to see a hearing or a little press conference from Gloria Allred, the lawyer, against some allegations of a USC doctor. We're going to jump into that right now.
About what they allege was inappropriate sexual harassment and misconduct by Dr. George Tyndall, a gynecologist who was assigned to examine and treat them when they were students at the University of Southern California, USC. Today we're filing a lawsuit against USC on behalf of one of those students, and we're also calling on USC to conduct an independent investigation of the very serious allegations made by these students who allege that for many years USC knew of inappropriate conduct by Dr. Tyndall, but failed to take appropriate measures to protect innocent students who were under his care. The lawsuit which we have filed this morning against Dr. Tyndall and USC is on behalf of Danielle Mohazab. Danielle was given an appointment to see Dr. Tyndall because of her regular gynecologist at USC was not available. Her appointment with Dr. Tyndall on April 4th, 2016 was for the purpose of discussing medication and for a sexually transmitted disease test. Danielle will provide details of the sexual harassment to which she alleges she was subjected, and also the remarks made to her, which contain stereotypes about women who are Filipino. She will also describe the inappropriate, harmful, and offensive manner in which she alleges that Dr. Tyndall conducted the STD examination of her vaginal area, which left Danielle feeling confused and violated. As a result of Dr. Tyndall's misconduct and USC's failures to protect Danielle, today we filed a lawsuit against Dr. Tyndall and USC in Los Angeles County. We allege sexual battery in violation of California Civil Code 1708.5, also battery, gender violence in violation of California Civil Code section 52.4, negligent hiring and retention, negligence, failure to provide an STD exam devoid of sexually harassing and or sexually assaulting conduct, fraudulent misrepresentation, negligent misrepresentation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligent infliction of emotional distress. We're seeking compensation, compensatory damages, and punitive damages according to proof at trial. Danielle has demonstrated tremendous courage by coming forward to file this lawsuit and allowing her name to be used in pursuing it, even though it involves a discussion of what is private, sexual, and intimate issues. She has been willing to make this public because she feels that it's important, and she wants other young women to know that she and they were innocent victims. They are not to blame. Instead, it is Dr. Tyndall and USC which must be held accountable. This series of events also raises the important questions of what did USC know and when did they know it? Some of the answers to these questions have been provided to me by a former USC student who wishes to maintain privacy, and I will call her Jane Doe. She has provided me with a declaration, which I've handed out to you, which states the following. I was a student at the University of Southern California, USC, from 1988 until 1992, when I graduated. In or about 1991, I went to see a gynecologist at USC, Dr. Tyndall, for a pap smear. I was told to undress from the waist down, given a paper type cover for the upper half of my body, and told to lie down. I did so, putting my feet on the stirrups at the end of the examination table. Dr. Tyndall walked into the examining room alone. He He began to perform the examination, but then turned around and pulled out a camera from behind a box on his shelf. Dr. Tyndall began to take pictures of my genital area close up. He said it was a new way to do examinations instead of a pap smear because they could see things more closely. He then got up and started to walk backwards away from the table and began taking full body pictures of my private area. I was trying to cover my face with a paper cover. After I came out of the examination room, my then boyfriend was waiting for me. I started crying. I told him what Dr. Tyndall had done to me. He told me that I had to report it. He and I went to the medical director of the clinic, and I told him what Dr. Tyndall had done to me. The medical director then had a female nurse speak to me in case I had been too embarrassed to tell him everything. I repeated the same story to her. The medical director told me that he went to confront Dr. Tyndall, but Dr. Tyndall had denied it and denied having a camera. Because I had told the medical director where Dr. Tyndall had retrieved the camera, the medical director told me that he was able to locate the camera. Then the medical director stated that Dr. Tyndall exposed the film in the camera. About a week after the incident, I called USC's Women's Advocacy Office to file a complaint. Nothing ever came of it. After reporting the incident to the medical director, I had assumed that some action would be taken by USC. However, the next year, when I made an appointment for my annual pap smear, I was given an appointment with Dr. Tyndall. I told the person the whole story about what had happened the year before, and I told her I did not want to see Dr. Tyndall again and to schedule my appointment with someone else. And that's the end of her quote. Assuming these allegations made by witness Jane Doe are true, USC was told as early as 1991 about Dr. Tyndall's sexual misconduct because Jane Doe alleges that she reported it then to the clinical medical director, a female nurse, and USC's Women's Advocacy Office. The fact that USC failed to take appropriate action to protect students from Dr. Tyndall after that is inexcusable. Finally, USC has now set up a hotline to take calls from students or former students who allege that they've been victimized. One former student, that's Angela, who called that hotline is with us today. She will recount her experience when she called the hotline and share what she thinks victims should do instead of calling it. It is time for USC to conduct a completely independent investigation of how and why the university failed to protect its female students from Dr. Tyndall. Young women had every right to expect that they could trust USC and the gynecologists assigned to examine them and treat them. Women are extremely vulnerable when they undergo their most intimate but necessary examinations. They have every right to feel that their trust was betrayed as they underwent what appears to be unprofessional and sometimes extremely risky and unnecessary invasions of their bodies by someone who may have thought only of satisfying his own sexual needs rather than adhering to his professional responsibilities. We will vigorously litigate this lawsuit and may be filing others as well. We will not stop until the truth is known and we win justice for the USC women whose rights were violated. And now, I would like to introduce Danielle. I think I'll have you change these. Okay, so you can do that. And this is yours.
Hello, my name is Daniela Mohaza. I am currently a master's student studying communication management at USC. I enrolled at USC in the fall of 2015. I was 19 years old at the time. Around March of 2016, I called to make an appointment to see Dr. Patty Pinanong, a gynecologist at USC whom I had previously seen. Because Dr. Pinanong was unavailable, I was given an appointment to see Dr. Tyndall. On April 4th, 2016, I went in for a standard STD test and to talk about medication. Dr. George Tyndall and I sat in his office and began to discuss my medications. He had his laptop and looked up the medications. Dr. Tyndall asked my race. I said I was Filipina. I remember that his office was messy and that there were framed pictures of his wife, who is also Filipina. He wore unprofessional clothing, leather lace-up shoes, loose khakis, and a button-up short-sleeve shirt. He made sexual comments about me and said that I was pretty. I remember him relating me to his wife, saying that Filipinas are the smartest, most giving, and gentle people. He told me that Filipinas are good in bed. He also said that Filipinas are devoted to their partners and that they don't sleep with many people in their lifetime. He asked intimate sexual details about me and then related my answers to my being Filipina and saying, I guess that's because you are mixed. Again, he had a creepy smile. Then we went into the exam room for my STD test. Again, it was just Dr. Tyndall and me. There was no chaperone or monitor present. He told me that Dr. Pinanong had conducted the STD tests incorrectly and inaccurately. The year before, when Dr. Pinanong gave me the STD exam, she provided the swab and asked me to insert it myself. She then closed the curtain in the room to provide me with privacy while doing that. On the other hand, Dr. Tyndall told me to undress from the bottom down. And he stood there watching while I did so. And he smiled. He then instructed me to lie on the examining table, which I did. I then put my feet into the stirrups. He gave me some paper to put on top of my upper legs. Without a glove, he put 2 fingers in me and felt around. He said, I think we better use some lube, with a snide look on his face as he opened the packet of lube that he retrieved from the cabinet on the side of the room next to the patient chair. He felt around by moving his fingers around inside for a few minutes. He said that this was part of an STD test. He didn't use a speculum or any other medical tools. He then stuck the swab into me and smiled. He then put it in a vial and said that we were done. At the time, he made me feel extremely uncomfortable and violated. However, I trusted that USC would have a gynecologist who was performing STD exams properly. I was confused because of his criticism of Dr. Pinanong, but I trusted him because he was older than the prior gynecologist, and I therefore thought he would have more experience in performing STD exams properly. Because I was new to USC and trusted the institution, I thought that I could trust him. I am still in shock that USC had heard about Dr. Tyndall's inappropriate conduct and had allowed him to continue practicing. Reportedly, USC was aware of Dr. Tyndall's inappropriate conduct before I was even born. USC is a great school, but this should not have happened. This incident has resulted in my being less trusting of doctors altogether. I trusted USC as an institution, but USC has let me down. I am proud of these steps that the administration has now started taking. But I am looking for justice, not just for me, but for all victims. Thank you.
We just got an update that we're going to be hearing from Baltimore County Police in Maryland. This is after an officer was shot and killed yesterday in Maryland. There have been new information that has come out overnight and into this morning about it. They were searching for several suspects, and they have all been taken into custody. And then they've also released the name of the officer. So we haven't really gotten all the details. We're still kind of piecing things together, but police are supposed to be giving an update very shortly. There's actually some information from the Associated Press. They say that the 16-year-old teen who was arrested for killing this officer, he faces charges, but apparently there was an altercation where the officer was doing a traffic stop, looking into the car, but there was also a robbery going on. So this is Amy Caprio, who was almost a 4-year veteran of the Baltimore County Police, and she was investigating a suspicious vehicle in the community related to a robbery, but there was also some information that the suspect's car ran her over during this confrontation. So a lot of little gritty details going on here. Also, sorry to jump out of that before, that was USC students who were discussing some very gritty details, very tough stuff about sexual assault against a USC doctor, Dr. George Tyndall, who they say molested them while they were in appointments with him for just general checkup and just have things looked on. But then he took things way out of line and to a whole other level than just a checkup for these women. So additionally, because of these charges, the USC president has been asked to step down. This obviously echoes a lot of the information and stuff that we've seen with the Larry Nassar case in Michigan. So I'm curious to see what happens with this since all the backlash and details that came out about Nassar, and that the people knew about what was going on even without the students saying something, or that they did and weren't listened to. So there is a lot of details on that. There was Gloria Allred that was speaking before the two students had spoken, and this was dating back to the 80s that some of these cases had happened. We will check in Baltimore. There's supposed to be a press conference coming up. Just to recap, there was a police officer that was shot and killed in Maryland, and there was a search for several hours for some of the suspects. So there were 3 other teenagers that were taken into custody. They arrested one man, a 16-year-old kid, who apparently was confronted by the police officer. He was waiting in his car, but there was also a robbery going on in a nearby house. This is in the Perry Hall, White Marsh area of Baltimore County in northeast Baltimore County. So there is still some information that we're waiting to hear back from police. Apparently, the teen that was arrested, he tried to flee in the Jeep when he saw the officer come near, on the block after she was alerted, and followed him but then when he tried, she tried to get him to get out of the car, he drove at her. So some reports are saying that she was shot. In some places they're saying that he drove at her, ran her over. Still terrible that she'd be, lose her life on duty like that. So we're waiting to see what information police have on the matter, and I believe they're going to be speaking soon, so stand by.
Okay, cross it. Here we go. Cross it. Okay, they're moving towards the room. But I think they're still waiting for someone.
You want the yellow or not? Fine.
Everybody ready? Yeah, I'm Terrence Sheridan, Chief of the Baltimore County Police Department. With me today is our County Executive, Fred Homan, Scott Schellenberger, State's Attorney, Baltimore County, Secretary Sam Abed, Department of Juvenile Services, Colonel Steve Lavac, Chief of our Criminal Investigations Bureau, our spokesperson, Sean Vincent, and Jen Peach from our media office, and Jay Cleary on the end, Chief of Staff at Juvenile Services. Quickly, yesterday, about 2 o'clock, we received multiple calls in the Lin Wen Street or Avenue in Perry Hall. First was a suspicious vehicle, and then a burglary in progress. Our officer, Amy Caprio, responded. She saw a black Jeep at that location. She followed it into a court where it was stopped and turned around. She exited her car, ordered the driver out of that car. The driver opened the door. Then the door closed, and the car hit her, struck her, drove over her. At that particular point, she was seriously injured on the ground. Other units started responding. She was taken to Franklin Square Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. The medical examiner has ruled it a homicide, and death was by multiple trauma to the head and torso. The ensuing investigation, we developed a suspect in Duante Harris, who was arrested almost immediately after this incident. I think due to the description from witnesses at the scene, he was picked up on Belair Road. The subsequent investigation led us to the 3 additional suspects in the burglaries. We now have them in custody, and we are continuing our investigation into that part of this case. Mr. Harris has been charged with murder. The other 3 suspects have not been charged yet. That's still being investigated. Unfortunately, we've lost a police officer to a senseless act, and we're now dealing with proceeding forward with a funeral and services for Officer Caprio. And with that, I'll open up to any questions anybody has of me.
So there was no gunshot wound to the officer?
No, ma'am.
Was there any indication that any of the 4 who've been arrested were armed?
We have not recovered any firearms, but there was a firearm stolen in a burglary that occurred about 2 miles from the burglary on Lin Wen Place. And we are investigating both as having similar MOs and suspect that they may be related.
The scenario here is that the murder suspect was in the vehicle when the fatal encounter occurred. The other 3 were in the house burglarizing. What happened to them? How did they get out, get away? What did they do?
We assumed, we're still investigating that part, we're assuming that they made their way somewhere to get some kind of public transportation and or phone someone to come get them. And hopefully we'll have that answered by the end of the day.
Where were the 3 found?
In Baltimore City, West Baltimore, in their homes, residence.
What can you tell us about the association among these? And I know that there may be additional people that you're looking at, as you said. What can you tell us? What was their MO? What were they doing in that area? You said that earlier that the department said earlier there may be other burglaries.
Yes. We've got 3 juveniles, or correction, 4 juveniles. They used forced entry to get into a home through a rock through a window. Went inside, stealing jewelry, cash, anything they get their hands on. And so with that kind of linkage, we believe that the 4 were acting together to commit these burglaries.
Were they on a spree that day and the hours leading up to this incident where the officer was killed? They had gone into other houses? Had they targeted other houses? How organized was this?
I don't know how organized it was. We know that they are responsible for at least 1 burglary at Lin Wen. We do believe and suspect that they may have caused the burglary at another North Wind Road about 2 miles away.
May we ask Secretary Abbott a question?
Yes, you may.
Assistant State Attorney today in the bail hearing revealed that this is an individual, Mr. Harris, who was arrested 4 times for car theft, adjudicated as sustained finding in one case. It kind of bounced around between community programs, detainment
detention program. What can the agency say about how this individual was dealt with?
So first, I'd like to say that our hearts go out to our brothers and sisters in Baltimore County law enforcement for their loss, and to the family of this officer. We are in shock about the incident and what happened, and we will work with Baltimore County Police Department and State's Attorney's Office to help resolve this case. As a result, with Mr. Harris, he was involved with the system. The facts that were related are correct. On April 17th, he was detained on a writ at the request of the department, and thereafter on May 10th, there was a detention hearing that the department was not a party to, where the youth was released back to electronic monitoring. While he was on electronic monitoring between then and May 18th, his compliance was poor, and we again requested the court violate the youth, Mr. Harris, to bring him in for non-compliance. The hearing on May 18th resulted in a continuance and no order from the court.
Is there anything, will the agency review this case?
Absolutely. We've already been reviewing this case and working with our partners.
On May 14th, at the bail review, it indicated that his mother had reported that her son had not showed up for work or called workers to say, had she notified the court system as well? Were you aware on May 14th that his mother didn't know where he was?
We were in communication with his mother, trying to locate the youth, and she had communicated to us, and it was part of the reason why we escalated this to the court and asked them to violate.
So whose decision was it to release him back to community, back to house arrest, essentially? Whose decision was that?
The court acted with the state's attorney and the public defender. We were not at that hearing. We were not part of that hearing. The department was not.
Can you describe the efforts you went through to try to find him after May 14th when you knew that he was missing?
Yes. Our staff contacted his mother on numerous occasions. We attempted to contact the youth through his cell phone, he went to his school and other places that we knew him to frequent to try and locate him. We made many attempts to try to contact this young man.
Chief, what's your take on all of this? The judge across the street, she decided to hold this 16-year-old Mr. Harris as an adult essentially now, described him as a one-man crime wave. You know the history now, and he's out running around stealing cars, burglarizing houses, and confronting your officer. What's your take on how this system works and your emotions with that?
Well, all you want to do is make sure that our police officers are safe and that Baltimore County residents are safe. Unfortunately, in this situation, we have a 16-year-old who has caused the death of one of our police officers. Did the system not work? It sounds like that it could have worked better in this particular case. This 16-year-old perhaps shouldn't have been out, but now we have a 16 we're treating as an adult because of the gravity of the offense that he has committed. And that's serious business. But we're seeing in Baltimore County an increase in the arrest of juveniles for serious crimes. And Secretary Abed is aware of it. Our courts are aware of it. And a lot of people are talking about it. And we're talking about a lot of things across this nation today. And things are going to have to change. We're seeing the level of violence, and especially against the institution of law enforcement, we've never seen before. And I think that we all have to get together and have a much more concerted effort to perhaps identify these problems early on so we don't get juveniles into this situation so young in life.
Any doubt in your mind he should be treated as an adult?
No doubt in my mind. No, he did an act which impacts a family, a spouse, brothers and sisters in law enforcement, the institution. That young man has done an act which he should be treated as an adult.
Is there someone that can address the officer and what she was known as in the department? I believe she was officer of the month in December in a case that I think got some TV attention.
She is Officer Caprio is the type of officer that you want to hire. She had a bachelor's degree from Towson. Smart, athletic, energetic, and with not quite 4 years on the job, was starting to show that she had all the potential to be an excellent officer and one of the leaders of this organization in the future. And when you hire someone like that and you see that potential, you say, you know, we're in good hands. We're going to be okay. But when it's snuffed out like this, you have emotions which I think make you wonder what's really going on out there. But young Officer Caprio, to me, when I look at her performance, look at the things she was doing, and hear the comments from her co-workers, both at Essex and at the Parkville precinct, and she was the kind of officer that was going to go up in this organization and lead at some time in the future. She would be a leader here.
Any word on when her body would be moved from the medical examiner's office, and have you talked to the family, made any progress on when
Yes.
or what will happen next in terms of a funeral?
Yes, we're having a viewing on Thursday at the Shimonik Funeral Home in Perry Hall. Service will be at the Mountain Christian Church on Friday in, I believe that's Falston, Harford County, and then a service at the Delaney Valley Memorial Gardens following that on Friday.
Thank you, everybody. We don't expect any additional press conferences today. You will be available at our office if you want to call 2210 for any questions.
Yes, Mr. Schellenberger, a quick question.
Sure.
In terms of the evidence that's been presented, I mean, obviously there's this body cam video, which is crucial in the case. As a prosecutor, how do you see this case fitting in, and the fact that he's 16, will that end up playing a role? Give us a perspective on how you plan to pursue this.
So in Maryland, individuals who are 14 and older and charged with murder can be charged as an adult and kept in the adult system. We plan on keeping him in the adult system. The case that the police have already put together on against him is very strong. I know they will continue to work to collect more evidence and make the case even better. Regarding the body cam video, it is, I'm told, very telling of what happened on that particular occasion. I have made a recommendation to the chief that the video not be released. I feel strongly that all defendants have a right to a fair jury trial. I anticipate that sometime in the next several years this defendant may have a jury trial, and therefore I believe that it's important that potential jurors not be watching this video over and over again. And strange things could happen. A judge could suppress the video for some particular reason, and then how would we get a jury picked in Baltimore County? So we have recommended that the video not be released in order to preserve the right to the jury trial. Other than that, we handle, unfortunately, a lot of cases like this.
And what about the other three? What will they be charged with in connection with all this?
So in Maryland, there's a way to be charged with first-degree murder. It's called felony murder, and that is when individuals work as co-defendants in committing a felony, which the burglary of a house is. They are in for everything that occurs as a result of that burglary, including when their co-defendant is outside running over a police officer and killing her. And so we believe we have a solid theory to proceed on murder charges against all four of them. Certainly the driver is much more simplistic of a way to present to the jury, but we believe under Maryland law, all three of the individuals who are not in the car can also be charged with felony murder.
What are they charged with now?
I do not believe they've been formally charged now. They're still working on that.
Any thoughts on when they'll be charged?
Sometime soon. We've had them now in custody for several hours, and so by law we have to move along. So we anticipate them being charged in the very near future. Our investigators are running out leads. They're putting together, as Mr. Schellenberger pointed out, a case that would be prosecutable. And we don't want to miss anything in this case. We want to make sure it's a good, tight case, and that if we charge the remaining defendants with any criminal violations, any crimes, we want to make sure we can prove it in court.
be some systemic failures in the juvenile case here. Is there any thought or looking into changing some procedures?
Well, these are things that I think Mr. Abed pointed out, that maybe there are some changes that are needed, but I think that we're seeing, as I pointed out earlier, a lot more juveniles being arrested and charged with serious crimes. So I think that as we're looking at this and we're seeing what's going on, perhaps we need to change some things so that we don't have reoccurrences of what happened yesterday.
The rising carjacking in particular among juveniles concerns you in particular?
Absolutely. Because of that, we started a carjacking unit in Baltimore County just to address the carjackings. This is a law that came into effect a number of years ago because of an egregious crime. And we saw this developing several months back at the end of last year. And so sat down with Colonel Avac and his people and operations and people, and came up with a plan to put a carjacking team in place to make sure that when we had a carjacking case that we followed all the way through, running out every piece of evidence we could to make sure that if someone committed a carjacking that we were going to arrest them. Because it's a robbery. It's a robbery, and you're taking away something of value from somebody. The legislature gave it a term of carjacking, but it's robbery and taking your vehicle. And we want to make sure that when that robbery is committed or that carjacking is committed, that we arrest those people responsible for it. And I think we've been doing a pretty good job of it. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of juveniles involved in it. And as with that, with the one question, are we concerned? Yes, we are. And because of this increase in the arrest of juveniles in Baltimore County, and juveniles especially associated with carjacking cases. Okay. Thank you all very much.
So that was the latest update in Towson, Maryland from Baltimore County Police in regard to the death of Baltimore County Police Officer Amy Caprio yesterday. Again, they said that the main suspect is Dante Anthony Harris, and he's been charged with first-degree murder. He and some other, he's 16, and he and some other teens, I believe, were involved in a robbery when the officer came into the area. And I will correct myself, she was not shot. That was reported earlier today, but they earlier during the event on Monday. But it seems that she was just run over, which is just terrible. So we will see what's going on more with this. Some of the prosecutors had said that, you know, they're charging him with first-degree murder because even though, you know, they were there for a robbery, you know, once you go in for something like that in Maryland, you can, you know, you're liable for anything else that comes after that. So additionally, they did give some details that he had been, you know, under arrest or been in and out of the system for other charges just within the past week prior, I believe. They said something was going on May 10th, so just to get some less than 2 weeks to go. So, you know, the fact that he was able to get out and commit this crime is really tough, and I'm from that area, so it's kind of weird to see that happened. But, you know, there's a lot of back and forth between Baltimore City and Baltimore County. In fact, they had said during this press conference that, you know, they have a specific carjacking unit. There was a lot of carjackings both in Baltimore County and Baltimore City. In fact, a Baltimore City councilwoman, Ricky Spencer, she was just walking to her car in the city last year and was attacked by a teen for her car. But she fought and she ended up getting a black eye. This little lady got a black eye from these kids during that whole thing. So that's been kind of a rampant issue, throughout the area. So we will see what comes next from this. And I'm sorry we did miss the White House press conference, but if anything else is coming forward this evening, we will check back with you. I'm all done for the day, but thanks for watching, and check in with us tomorrow.